I'd like to welcome everybody to the final budget hearing for the Board of County Commissioners, Thursday, September 19th at 6 o'clock p.m. If we can all please rise for the pledge and the invocation. Thank you.
I invite you to join with me if you're willing. Gracious Father, there are times when we come to each new day with burdens and worries from yesterday. Help us greet each new sunrise with enthusiasm, with the knowledge that today might just provide some of the best moments we will ever know. Whether it's the sparkle in the eye of a loved one, whether kindness shared with a complete stranger, or just a moment to reflect on the blessings in our lives, each new day can be a great day, and for that we are grateful, we are thankful, and we say amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The purpose of the public hearing is to adopt the final millage rate and the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. Please note to all members of the public, we have staff available this evening to review and discuss your personal notice of proposed property taxes recently received from the property appraiser. Staff members of the property appraiser's office and OMB are located at the entrance of the chambers to my left. Howard, if you would like to start this off for us.
I will. Madam Chair and Board of County Commissioners, good evening. At this meeting, we will be setting the final millage rates. I would ask that the Office of Management and Budget read into the record the final millage rates being considered for fiscal year 2019-2020, which are used to fund the portion of the 2019-2020 budget that is supported by property taxes.
Madam Chair and Board of County Commissioners, I would like to take a moment to review some terms for the public that will be used frequently tonight. The millage rate is the amount per $1,000 of property value that is used to calculate property taxes. The rollback rate is the millage rate that would generate the same ad valorem tax revenue as was generated the previous year, excluding changes from new construction, annexation, or de-annexation. The aggregate millage rate is the rate obtained by dividing the sum of all the ad valorem taxes levied by the board by the taxable value of the county. The aggregate rate expresses the average tax rate. The aggregate millage rate being considered for the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget is 8.8759, which is a 0.28% decrease from the current fiscal year 2018-2019 aggregate millage rate, or a 5.03% increase from the fiscal year 2019-2020 aggregate rollback rate of 8.4509. The individual fiscal year 2019-2020 millage rates being considered are as follows. General Fund, 4.3077 mills. Fine and forfeiture, 3.2324 mills. Erosion Control Zone E, 0.1497 mills. Mosquito Control District, 0.1806 mills. Unincorporated Services MSTU, 0.3840 mills. Stormwater MSTU, 0.3497 mills. Law Enforcement MSTU, 0.9103 mills. Parks MSTU, 0.2313 mills. Transit MSTU, 0.1269 mills.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this takes us to Agenda Item 4B, which is the budget presentation. Ms. Jennifer Hill, who's the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, will begin that presentation.
Thank you. This is the last step in what has been nearly a year-long process. The Office of Management and Budget started working with county departments on their capital needs in February, their operating needs in March, and we had meetings with each department and administration in April and May. At that point, a recommended budget was prepared in June and was discussed with the board in budget workshops over the course of 3 days in July. The board then approved the proposed tax rates at a regular board meeting in July, and we had a tentative budget hearing 2 weeks ago. We've had detailed meetings with our departments, constitutional officers, and judicial agencies, just to name a few. At tonight's meeting, we will be asking the board to adopt the final millage rates and budget for the year that begins October 1st. The fiscal year 2020 budget that is being presented to you tonight is $587.5 million, which represents an increase of approximately $42 million from the fiscal year 19 adopted budget. The overall budget increases and decreases over the years for many reasons. This year, the increases are related to the new infrastructure sales tax, incremental revenues associated with property value growth, and grant revenues. The budget being presented is approximately $300,000 less than what was presented at our tentative hearing 2 weeks ago. This is due to adjustments related to carry-forward funds. The overall Board of County Commissioners workforce is budgeted at 800 full-time equivalent, or FTE, positions, which is 13.7 FTE increase from the adopted fiscal year 19 budget. This budget reflects changes to the millage rates for the general fund, fine and forfeiture fund, erosion control, and the mosquito control district. Some of the rates are increasing and others are decreasing to offset the increase, so that ultimately there is a slight reduction in the aggregate millage rate. This gives us an aggregate millage rate of 8.8759 mills. Next year's budget is $98 million lower, with 182 less positions than at the peak of the market, while at the same time the population has grown by approximately 64,000 people. And for next year, we will be operating with a workforce that is the size that it was in 2003, yet over that 17-year period, our population is projected to have grown by approximately 56%, or 120,000 residents. And we continue to see an increase of 6,000 people each year. And while next year will be the 7th year that we have seen growth in the taxable value, property values are still 14%, or $3.5 billion lower than they were when property values peaked at $25.6 billion. And so the total budget under consideration is $587 million. The county budget is very complex. We provide many different services and we collect money from different sources. Most of the county's budget has restrictions. These restrictions come from state and federal laws, grant agreements, and other contractual restrictions. Here you see the budget broken down by fund type. On this chart, the area that the board has the most flexibility in allocating is the $234 million that's labeled General Fund and Fine and Forfeiture Fund. Of the $234 million in the General Fund and Fine and Forfeiture Fund, $105 million is allocated to the constitutional officer budgets, $60 million to non-operating accounts such as reserves, budget transfers, and CRA payments. And roughly 25%, or $58 million, of the General Fund Fine and Forfeiture budget is allocated to the operations of the departments that report to the board. Property taxes in the state of Florida are very complex. While there are complexities in the assessment of value, the formula for property taxes is simple. The property taxes levied equals the millage rate times the assessed value of the property divided by 1,000. The taxes collected are influenced by two factors, the millage rate and the assessed value. The aggregate rate expresses the average tax rate. But ultimately, the cost to provide service is the focus of the budget, and that is what drives the rates. And so, in many ways, the property tax system that we have in the state of Florida is broken. And while we don't always agree with the fairness of the system, it is set by state law. St. Lucie County does not have the legal ability to fix the inequities that occur throughout the community. And while we talk about the overall taxes and how that equates to an average person, The current system is essentially a seniority-based system where newer homeowners are paying higher taxes. This is the way that the state has the system structured. There are some that pay above average and some that pay below average. But the focus of the budget is the cost to provide the services, and that cost is what drives the rates. We have a system where two identical houses right next door to each other can have vastly different assessed values and therefore pay vastly different taxes. To illustrate this, we took a sample from the property appraiser's website and we looked at 4 property tax notices for very similar houses, all in the same neighborhood, all within 10% of same square footage, all 2-bedroom, 2-bath, all on quarter-acre lots, all built around the same time. And the resulting property tax notices had vastly different tax bills. And so in this example, we have house number 1 at $867 and house number 4 at $3,100. The difference in the actual market value of those houses is only a 5% difference, yet the property taxes of house number 4 are nearly 4 times the property taxes of house number 1. As I mentioned, the first factor in the taxes levied is the millage rate. For fiscal year 2019, the average millage rate levied by all taxing districts in St. Lucie County was 22.8369 mills. Of that, 8.9 mills were levied by St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners, which includes constitutional officers, dependent districts, municipal service taxing units. St. Lucie County's millage rate is higher than average. However, the millage rate is only one part of the equation. The second factor in the taxes levied is the property value. This year, the per capita property value throughout the state of Florida ranged from just under $15,000 to right around $359,000 per capita throughout the Florida counties. The statewide average was $89,392 per capita, and St. Lucie County's value was $67,599 per capita, which is 24% less than the average. Property taxes is the mechanism that is used to fund the cost associated with the many different government services. So how does the cost of St. Lucie County's services compare? To answer this question, we look at the entire tax bill levied, and we look at the portion of the tax bill that is levied by the Board of County Commissioners. First, let's consider the entire tax bill. Last year, collectively, $33.3 billion in property taxes were levied in the state of Florida. These taxes were to support a statewide population of 20.8 million people. If you divide the total taxes levied by the total population, you get an average tax bill in the state of Florida of $1,597 per person. In St. Lucie County, all agencies combined levied $485.2 million in property taxes. These taxes were used to support a countywide population of 302,000 people. And if you divide the taxes levied by the population, you get an average tax bill of $1,604 per person. Next, we consider the portion of the tax bill that is levied by the Board of County Commissioners. This includes taxes that fund Board of County Commissioners departments, constitutional officers, municipal service taxing units, independent districts. However, when we compare this part of the equation, this is not always an apples-to-apples comparison. For example, St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners' taxes include mosquito control and erosion, while some Board of County Commissioners do not. On the other hand, some Board of County Commissioners include the unincorporated fire services in their millage rate, while St. Lucie Board of County Commissioners does not. Every community has a different mix of needs and different ways of providing for those needs. However, they all have to live under the same taxing law, which at times seems muddled and confusing. Last year, collectively, $12.8 billion in property taxes were levied by Board of County Commissioners statewide. These taxes were to support the statewide population of 20.8 million, which is an average tax bill of $615 per person. And in St. Lucie County, the Board of County Commissioners levied $182 million in property taxes. These taxes were to support the countywide population of 302,000, which gives you an average tax bill of $602 per person. So what does this mean? It means that the entire tax bill in all St. Lucie County taxing authorities together are levying near the same amount of taxes as the average tax bill for the state of Florida, and the St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners is levying taxes that are slightly below the average for Board of County Commissioners within the state of Florida. And since the beginning of this fiscal year, St. Lucie County voters have approved 2 referendums to pay more taxes for the needs of our community. Both the infrastructure sales tax and the school board millage increase represent local issues where there was a demonstrated need, and the majority of St. Lucie County voters were willing to pay for this need. We are very thankful to the voters for helping to give us resources to help address the needs of the community. Neither the infrastructure surtax referendum nor the referendum for the schools were presented as tax reduction. They were just the opposite. They were presented as ways to increase funding so that the needs of our community could be met. And we are very thankful that the infrastructure sales tax is there to be able to help us address our infrastructure needs. However, it does not fully cover our needs, and we are also utilizing the general fund to cover transportation infrastructure needs. Over this last year, we have utilized $3.5 million from our general fund transportation reserves. The budget that's being considered tonight does not replenish these reserves. And while these reserves are not as critical as they were before the passage of the infrastructure sales tax, this is still the go-to funding source when a culvert breaks. At our tentative budget hearing 2 weeks ago, there was some discussion on what changes have occurred with the millage rates over the last 5 years. The St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners aggregate millage rate, which includes the board departments, constitutional officers, dependent districts, and municipal service taxing districts. In 2 of the last 5 years, the millage rate was increased to cover investments in public safety, as public safety is a core component of government services. And on 3 of the 5 years, fiscal year 17, fiscal year 19, and the year that we're proposing tonight, the aggregate millage rate decreased slightly. And on this graph, you'll see that although the school board is levying the additional mill that was approved by voters earlier this year, their total millage rate is actually slightly lower than it was in fiscal year 2015. The city of Port St. Lucie and the city of Fort Pierce raised their millage rate in fiscal year 16, and Port St. Lucie has decreased their rate over the last 4 years, as their property value increases have outpaced the rest of the county. I know one of the things that was mentioned that I inadvertently forgot to put on this chart was the fire district's millage rate, and that millage rate has been consistently the same millage at 3 mills each of the 5 years. It is not on this chart, but I did want to give you that information. We have been working our 5-year plan, and the other agencies are working according to their plans. On average, approximately 39% of the tax bill is levied by the St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners, with the other 61% levied by the school board, the municipalities, and the special districts. For the St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners, the fiscal year 2020 budget has a slight reduction in the aggregate millage rate. However, what individuals pay in property taxes varies based on the circumstances of their specific property. Approximately 47% of county's parcels have homestead exemptions, and this slide represents the impact of a sample home on a homesteaded property located within one of the cities. We focus on the $200,000 property, and due to increases in values, the property taxes increase by $31.27, or $2.61 per month. And although not levied by this board, the property will also see an increase related to a 1 mil increase for schools, which equates to $14.90 per month. This next slide represents the same information, but on the impact of a non-homesteaded property located within one of the cities. Due to increases in values, a $200,000 property taxes would increase by $136.59, or $11.38 per month. And again, even though not levied by this board, they would also see the results of the increase in the millage rate from the schools, which equates to $18.05 per month. Since 2010, the county has relied on reserves to fill the gap between revenues and expenses. At the end of fiscal year 2018, the fund balance in the general fund and fine and forfeiture fund was less than half of what it was in 2010. Over that time frame, the fund balance has decreased from $112 million to $51 million. We expect the fund balance will drop further this year as we utilize $1.8 million to fund the current year's operating budget, and we use some of the fund balance to cover expenses related to inmate medical. The fund balance includes $36.5 million for the county's reserve policy, which includes three components: $16.5 million for emergency reserves, $14 million for budget stabilization, and $6 million for transportation infrastructure reserves, which this year is being spent down to $2.5 million. In fiscal year 15, we developed a 5-year plan to stabilize our budget so that our recurring expenses did not exceed our recurring revenue. As we go into the 5th and final year of that plan, with the utilization of $1.8 million in revenue generated from this year's property tax growth, the budget being considered has us attaining our goal. As we are finishing a commitment to the 5-year plan that stabilized the budget, we begin to consider what the next 5 years looks like. That will be developed over the coming months, taking into account that the board has expressed a desire to see millage rate reductions and a review of the county's reserve policies.
As we went through the budget workshops in July, we addressed several challenges in areas where we had to make additional investments. Under beach renourishment, we have identified 3 tiers of funding needs for the erosion district. This budget makes gains on the first 2 tiers, which are erosion district reserves and the Fort Pierce Beach, but does not provide any funding for the 3rd and most expensive tier, which is the South County Beach project. Under building maintenance, there are several areas where needs related to our facilities outstep the resources available. The budget provides for 3 additional positions in critical areas of maintenance so we can increase maintenance efforts and some additional funding for maintenance needs, while also looking at ways to shed facilities through a more efficient use of space. Under compensation, 2 years ago, the county performed a review and found that on average we were 25% below the market rates. That year, the county made an investment in its employees and helped to close that gap. However, we remain around 18% behind the market still today. There is funding in this budget for another pay study. This will be a full-blown pay study. Under transit, over the past year, transit has taken a more prominent role as we work to expand our system to meet our growing economy. That includes getting our citizens to training and educational facilities. We are future-focused on what's next, and that's important for our growing community and ensuring that our municipal partners feel that their citizens are getting good value for their service. Lastly, the jail population. It is a high jail population that creates a higher financial risk environment for the County Commission. There is the increased risk for higher inmate medical costs, which we saw this past year with an additional $1.5 million, for the wear and tear on facilities and the probability of having to build additional jail beds, higher correctional staffing, and operating costs. The proposed budget includes increased funding for inmate medical expenses in the coming year. This is part of a bigger conversation on how to control costs and learn from best practices implemented by other agencies around the state. Some of these challenges will require long-term solutions, while we strive to be an organization that makes continuous improvements. The savings associated with reviewing many of our activities are overcome by increased costs associated with multi-million-dollar issues, such as the loss of sand on a beach or inmate medical expenses. As was mentioned, the cost of service drives the tax rates. We take many approaches to find ways to control the cost of services. With our scarce resources, we must leverage our funds to help us accomplish our goals. Both the Erosion District and the Transit Division typically leverage approximately $4 for every dollar is budgeted. Approximately 80% of the funding for the maintenance, repair, and overhaul hangar that is coming up at the Treasure Coast International Airport is coming from grants. Over the years, our Environmental Resources Department has turned $20 million in funds into over $80 million through grant funding and land donations. The sales tax will also help us leverage our resources. Prior to its approval, we were in a situation where grant opportunities were being missed because we did not have the funding available to pay for the required matches. Recently, we added, at the board's direction, a grant position that will help us secure additional grant opportunities and leverage our available resources. In addition to leveraging our resources, we have many examples of how we do more with less. We are one of the only counties that make money on recycling. We take innovative approaches to wellness, resulting in healthcare costs far below the national trend. In purchasing, we utilize a credit card cashback program that brings in additional funding, and we use bulk purchases for fuel and bulk lease agreement for copiers. Facilities have been analyzing our space needs with a goal of reducing the county's overall square footage to reduce maintenance costs and overhead costs. The stadium renovations utilize owner direct purchases, which result in savings that are put back into the project. We are moving toward the consolidation of processing utility and communication bills to facilitate improving the ways we analyze and control these expenses. We have purchased new equipment when the cost of repairing the old equipment was no longer cost effective, as we don't want to put more money into fixing equipment than the equipment is actually worth. We utilize volunteers in many areas to help control costs, from libraries to environmental resources to parks and recreation programs and to the county's extension office. We are constantly reviewing the way that we provide services, and we always strive to do better. In addition to external audits that are required of counties, we also work closely with internal auditors to review our processes and procedures to find ways to improve them. Last year, the state initiated an audit related to the sales tax referendum. They did a deep dive into the proposed projects and internal controls and processes for administering our public works project. This was if you'll recall, it was a legislative mandate for any county that wanted to impose a sales tax, and we were required to go through this evaluation. We were pleased that they did not find any material weaknesses in our existing policies and procedures. We have also implemented performance management software, and I meet quarterly with the departments to discuss ways to improve our efficiency and effectiveness. The Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt and Green Belt program is a critical component to our efforts to reduce the cost of government services. We have trained 65 employees as Green Belts, myself included, and they provide a great resource for process improvement and customer service enhancements. We have a team that works to find ways to continuously improve our organization. This list represents the Greenbelt projects that have been or are currently being analyzed. Much more important than the list of projects you see here is the changing of the culture of the organization, a culture that encourages cost saving and encourages taking the resources we have and making sure we are utilizing them to the best of our ability. And you can see the last item on this list, grounds maintenance, that refers to the mowing discussion at the July workshops, and we've assembled a team to evaluate the service to see how we can improve. We work to have more cost-effective operations. We are also able to join forces with our local partners, such as the legislative coordination that we see when we work together with the school board and the city of Fort Pierce handling their legislative activities. Some of our expenses are a pay now or pay later situation. For example, we can provide funding for the Hands Clinic, which provides medical services to what we call the working poor, or we can pay increased Medicaid expenses later at the hospital emergency room. By proactively addressing the situation, we can help provide a service to the community and at the same time reduce our expenses down the road. We also understand that sometimes there are times when changes are needed, as we have recently seen with the animal shelter. Public-private partnerships are one way we leverage our resources to provide for our community. The Port Working Waterfront is an example where the county is working to be more effective on two levels. First, by purchasing the property, we were able to make more effective use of a resource in our community by taking on an endeavor that has an estimated $100 million impact to our community and is expected to create hundreds of jobs. Second, by partnering with the private sector, we're able to make effective use of the county's resources by covering the cost of our investment through a lease agreement. Another example is the Copas Nursing Home, where a $500,000 investment from St. Lucie County will result in a $100 million veterans nursing home that will serve our community and our veterans in tradition. As we look forward to future budget cycles, we know that we have some work to do. In the coming months, we will be working to create a strategic plan with you where we consider the future that we want to see for our community so that we're more effectively planning for the future. We have received direction from you to work on a long-term plan that incorporates millage rate reductions and a review of the county's reserve policies, and we will be working on that plan over the coming months. Madam Chair, that completes the budget presentation. That now takes us to item 4C. Madam Chair and Commissioners, item 4C allows for public comment on the final county budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020. Madam Chair, we are now ready to accept public comments on this final budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Okay. Everyone who wants to speak has turned in a card. If you haven't, this is your opportunity. Madam Secretary, will you start calling public? I will open the public hearing at this point.
Up first is Terry Shelton. After that will be Mark DeRosa, followed by Marjorie Matthew. Oh, you can give that to me. Sorry.
No, her, sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were pointing to the podium.
Just right here.
Mark DeRosa.
That is correct. Mr. McIntyre, would you like to address that?
Right. We typically have a 5-minute on public hearings, so we're going to put the buzzer, but this is a special public hearing for budget, so we're not going to gavel anybody down at the 5-minute mark, but we're going to just indicate if you could please come to a close. But we do obviously want to hear everybody's comments and questions on the budget. That's really the primary focus for tonight's meeting. So we're not doing a 3-minute. It's a 5-minute, and it's just for purposes of just reminding people that they have done the 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Good to go?
Yes.
All right. Good evening. My name is Mark DeRosa. I live at 3143 South Indian River Drive. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to address the commission tonight. I'm here to ask you to lower our millage rate for property taxes. It's come to my attention this year after a series of tax increases at the county level that our millage rate for property tax is the highest in the state of Florida out of 67 counties. According to a study done by Florida Tax Watch in January of 2018, St. Lucie County had a millage rate of 23.114. The average county millage rate for the state of Florida was 18.097, and the median rate was 16.885. This means that our rate was 27.7% higher than the state average and almost 37% higher than the state median. And anybody who knows anything about statistics knows that median is a much better tool to use when looking at something like that. Keep in mind that this is before the millage rate was increased by 1 for the school district referendum in April, and I believe that referendum in itself is a 4.3 increase for property taxpayers. Additionally, in 2018, the county passed a half-cent sales tax increase, which was projected to bring in additional revenue. Proponents of this increase championed that it would lessen the burden on property taxpayers. We've also had 7 straight years of increasing assessments for property values, and new construction is booming. It seems to me that with all of these new forms of tax revenue, there is room to cut our taxpayers a break. According to Zillow.com, the median home value in the state of Florida is $233,700. The median home value for St. Lucie County is $215,100. Our values are roughly 8% lower than the state level. Despite having below average property values, we have the eighth highest nominal median property tax out of 67 counties in Florida. Something does not add up. Lastly, I'd like to compare our levels of taxation to our income. According to taxrates.org, St. Lucie County residents paid 4.39% of their yearly income towards property taxes, which ranks 148th out of 3,143 counties in the country. That would put us in the top 4.7% in the country. I understand that setting a budget is a difficult process, but please understand that we as property owners are tapped out. It's time to reduce the millage rate and cut our taxpayers the break that they sorely deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. We've got to maintain, there's a lot of people that would like to speak. So please, no outbursts from the public. Thank you, ma'am.
I agree with everything he says.
Okay.
He's done his homework better than I. Marge Matthew, 10351 Southwest Indian Lilac in Vitalia. And I too believe that we are overtaxed. Moved up here from Palm Beach County, which I thought was the highest, and find out it's not. So I would appreciate it if you could lower our millage.
Thank you.
Marie Franzo. After that, Anita Germano and Lisa Kaufman.
My name is Marie Ferrazzano. I am at 10223 Southwest Fernwood, also from Vitalia. And I think the gentleman who spoke first was absolutely right. Our mileage, or whatever millage rate, is way too high. I came here 3 years ago. I'm a widow. I have an income, a limited income, and our taxes keep going up, up, and up. And I like Florida, and I don't want to leave, so please keep it down. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Anita Germano, 10347 Southwest Indian Lilac Trail in Port St. Lucie. Thank you for allowing me to comment this evening. One of the things that we notice out in the Tradition area in St. Lucie West is we have so many new roofs out there that hopefully during the course of this past year and the incoming year, more people will be paying taxes. So I can't understand why I've been here 3 years now, and I don't understand why we're not getting a little bit of relief or seeing a decrease in our taxes, being as we have so many new people paying taxes into St. Lucie County. And I appreciate all of the information about the budget, and things that affect us are such a tiny tax rate, like the mosquitoes and the parks and all the municipal services, but you have a giant general fund and a giant fine and forfeiture, which I'm not even really sure what those two issues are, but they use a lot of millage. So there should be a little wiggle room in there for us to have a little relief on our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kaufman. I live at 2915 South Indian River Drive. The millage rate has just hugely, gone up, and our taxes, they're just crazy on Indian River Drive. I came last year and spoke with the board, and they told me it was something we should talk about this year. The water qualities, we're paying high millage rate for premium waterfront property. We can't even use the river with all the runoff with the water from Lake Okeechobee and everything. The river was closed, and, they're telling you everything's bad, don't go in it. So, I just think they need to take the people, a lot of the people's into consideration where, we're not able to use what we're being taxed at. The water quality is deplorable, and I know they're trying to figure it out and get it taken care of. But, we just are holding our hands up and saying something's got to give. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Barry Mucklow. After that will be Mark Gotts and then Mike Friend.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Barry Mucklow. I live at 1891 Southeast Aries Lane in Port St. Lucie. As a member of the Citizens Budget Committee, I'm privileged to hear county staff present budget-related information with PowerPoints almost every month of the year. Most of this is at the 40,000-foot level, which is good for me. But it is enough to evaluate trends in spending and in saving, which are known in our county as reserves. That's the subject of my presentation tonight, if you can call it that. Now, as a citizen, I've seen my share of weather-related damage. Regrettably, we have all witnessed man-made damage and degradation of the Indian River Lagoon. With budget expenditures at the current levels, there is no extra allocated for emergencies or contingencies. With our state-imposed unfunded mandates, which Commissioner Zadowski and I share an incredulity that they exist in the level that they do, with our location relative to hurricanes, with these facts and evidence, demand that we implement reserve policies that have served us so well in the last 11 years is clearly present. The director of the White House Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vought, has committed to the 2020 President's budget to a 5% cut in all but defense spending. While they can print money, we can't. Government must live within our means. The need for reserves is not an if, it is a when. The decision is yours. I do not think, and I have advocated on the Citizens Budget Committee, that we save 1 cent out of every dollar and put it in our reserves. And I'm advocating that in front of you tonight, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Come on.
Mark Gotts, 154 Northwest Magnolia Lakes Boulevard, Port St. Lucie, Florida. Madam Chair and Commission, before I start my comments, your presentation brought out a very interesting issue. And that is that we're comparing our millage rate with other counties' millage rates. And the interesting factor about that is our fire district is an independent fire district, the only one in the state. So consequently, our fire district takes 3 mills for their operating, which is outside of the budget that you're proposing. Yet other counties and cities throughout the state have their fire departments incorporated in their budgets. So does that mean that we have a 3% edge on everybody else, or a 3 mil edge on everybody else that we're not allocating to reducing taxes? It seems like we're really not matching oranges to oranges. I come here this evening to ask that the Commission accept the CBC recommendation, which came out for a 1% cut across the board on all departments of the county. I actually call that the Mucklow resolution, since Mr. Mucklow was the one who brought it up. After all, this is only 1 penny on a dollar. We're a poor county, and our citizens need relief from government taxes. Obviously, we've talked already about the half-cent sales tax to take care of roads. And I still don't see anything going on Prima Vista, but I see it's on the board outside. And obviously, the full mill for the school district, which is great since they're building a new $27 million building. I mean, government has a way of spending every dollar that they can get from their taxpayers. Every year we roll over cash investments in excess of $200 million in this county. This is cash and investments, and it's rolled for the last 5 or 6 years that I've seen. And anybody who wants to find it can find it on the CAFRA study that can be obtained from the Budget Department. As our government here entity, the county ventures into real estate development. The purchase of a port for $25 million was quote-unquote to create jobs. May I remind you, it is not government that creates jobs. That is a private sector. Government's adventures into private sector fields seldom turns out well. I could quote 5 or 6 of those for the city of Port St. Lucie, such as VGTI, Digital Domain, Torrey Pines. Government does not do well in the private sector. Of course, they do have taxpayer money. The building hangar on the airport, which is an interesting project, this was $5 million in the budget 2 years ago. This last year, it went to $6.5 million, of which, sitting on the Citizens Budget Committee, I questioned. And the answer was that, well, it's a bigger hangar. Well, maybe government does not budget well. That's a 30% increase in 1 year. This building is designed to be leased, but so far we don't have a tenant. Is this the concept of build it and they will come? This project has been sitting around for 3 to 4 years. And if you're going to build a building without a tenant, that has a tendency to cost taxpayers additional money. And yes, it's being provided by a grant, but that's a government grant. And where does government get its money? At every level, it gets it from the taxpayer. So if it's a grant, it's still our money. We have increased real estate tax revenue this year of over $12 million due to the appreciation of our homes and new construction. We've had increases in our tax base for the past 7 years. With that increase, we have increased our top-end administration by adding 2 assistant county administrators over the last few years. Obviously, if government receives more money, it spends more money. And consequently, I see that we get another 13 FTEs this year with a total employment of over 800. We have over 10,000 acres of property that's owned by the county, over 1,000 acres on South Hutchinson Island alone. Sell some to a developer and reduce our taxes and create a better tax base for the citizens. This will also save us money on maintenance of these properties, which gets very expensive. After all, what is government's role? In my opinion, it is to provide the citizens safety through police and fire protection, is to provide clean air and clean water and good roads for commerce and travel by our citizens. And speaking about commerce, probably the one entity that really isn't in this room, although I know someone is in this room, who is on the commercial real estate side of this. And of course, our commercial properties pay a big bulk of our property taxes. And that $1 million increase that the school district got, I'm certain is going to affect what we pay for goods and services in this county. For the simple reason, those taxes go to the developer, which passes it through to the tenant. And those tenants are the people who provide goods and services to the citizens of St. Lucie County. So the commercial properties are being hit as well. In conclusion, just let me say this. I know that we have at least one commissioner who is for reducing taxes. And I certainly appreciate Commissioner Townsend's position on this issue. I hope that at least 2 more of the commission would look to reduce our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good evening. I'm Mike Friend. I live at 1369 Nettles Boulevard in unincorporated St. Lucie County. My civics teacher in high school told me that actually the lowest form of government was the one that was going to impact my life on a daily basis, most meaningfully. For me, that's you. As I understand it, part of the issue is that we've underestimated the value of our properties, so we have more tax dollars coming in and that was unexpected, and it's happened for more than a year. Well, I can understand how something like that happened. What I and everybody here is struggling with is why we need to come here and ask for the money back. To me, it's like going to Walmart and paying for my stuff, and I get too much change back from the cashier. Well, obviously, the right thing to do is to give the money back. It's not my money. The wrong thing to do is to go out and plan how to spend it. Simply put, you've been collecting too much of our money, and we want it back. I hear about the reserve and the 5-year plan, and I don't see how this unexpected occurrence affects that. I've also heard the Citizens Budget Committee say you need to reduce expenditures by 1% across the board, and I don't know what's going on with that. Last year, I know you asked for a half a cent to pay for infrastructure projects, and you got it. In April, the school board put one by us with an extra $1 in that mail-in only referendum, and that added $1 to everybody's tax bill. So those two things, that referendum also, as I understand it, helped fund the SROs that were previously unfunded. So now you can say the school board is a separate item, and that's not you, but I think what in the fire district isn't you, but I think what you got to understand is that what you do doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything affects us. It's the same taxpayer coming up with a check to pay for all of it. So you got the money for everything you needed, and we still, in the highest taxed county in the state of Florida, I think the right thing to do is to give us, the taxpayers, a refund. You know, Barack Obama, in his second term, threatened Congress by saying, I have a pen and I have a phone and I know how to use them. I can assure you that before the next election, that I and a lot of these people are going to make sure that every voter in St. Lucie County know how you stand on this issue. So do the right thing. Give us our money back. That way one of you doesn't have to explain to us why you don't want to. Thanks for your time.
David Abbots. After that, Janet Copeland and Emmett Dempsey.
Hello, my name is David Abbots. I live in unincorporated St. Lucie County. I live at 12 Del Prado. I moved here 6 years ago, and I took a job prior to retirement at a car lot. And I saw people come in and felt that $10 an hour was a man's wage. I'm talking about people thinking $10, and at $12 an hour, they could afford to buy a car and maybe get back and forth to work. I live in a retirement community. We are all on fixed incomes. And whether or not we get any kind of help from the federal government every year is a prayer. And having the largest millage rate within the state of Florida, you should be embarrassed. I see a new road being built, Crosstown Parkway, and I look up, I made my living in the construction industry, and I look at this albatross at the end of that bridge. I wonder how much it costs to build that Art Deco thing, whatever the hell it is. And I'm just furious. Being these people are working hard for their money, and they don't see the taxes and the millage rates that you pass. And it affects each and every one of them, and it's a hidden tax that they don't even follow. You all ought to be ashamed of yourselves. We want our money back.
Good evening. My name's Jeanette Copeland. I'm at 2001 Southwest Cassim Terrace, Port St. Lucie, Florida. And you can and should drop our property taxes. For example, if property tax on $100,000 is 1%, that means our taxes are $100. As appraisal goes up to $150,000, the millage rate stays the same. So then property taxes go up to $150. The appraisal is pushing property taxes up in real dollars and not just an increase in millage rate. Collecting higher taxes, even though the millage rate is the same or less, instead of us getting a break on the millage rate. Taxpayers like myself are on fixed income and will be taxed out of the county, and I do not appreciate that. I've lived here 9 years because I wanted to come to Florida. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emmett Dempsey. I reside at 7964 Saddlebrook Drive in PGA Village. I grew up here in Port St. Lucie. I was here when this was basically nothing, and I saw it come up. Graduated from Fort Pierce Central, went to college, Pennsylvania, in the military, studied in Korea 3 years at Fort Bragg, jumped out of airplanes. Came back home, and now I speak to you as a mortgage loan originator. I know there's a lot of stats the folks have already told. I agree with all that, lower the millage rate, et cetera. But let me tell you the actual human stories. You know, I talk to people every single day, look at their credit reports, pull their income, you know, people who want to buy homes. And it's the American dream. And, you know, stats have said that every year a person owns a home adds $15,000 to their net worth. So it's a big deal. It's access to wealth in America for most people, and especially in low and middle income folks. So one of the things after the crash in 2008, one of the rules that we had to follow is called ATR, ability to repay. So every loan that we do, no matter what, has a high watermark of debt to income. And I'm finding so many people cannot qualify. You know, taxes are a big part of their mortgage payment. So, you know, by lowering that millage, it definitely helps them to qualify. You know, because a lot of your millennials, who is a larger generation than the baby boomers, or first-time home buyers, are saddled with student loan debt. So on student loan debt plus all these property taxes, it makes them harder to qualify. And it also affects a lot of the folks who are moving into town. A lot of my clients are not just people who live here. A lot of people who live here can't afford to buy a house. Most of the people who get mortgage loans, you know, they're from out of state. You know, compared to up north, it's, you know, they see property taxes, whoa, it's so low. But then they live here and they see the increases. It's just, you know, when I'm trying to qualify folks to buy homes, is definitely hopefully we lower the millage rate. So it's just something to keep in mind. And ultimately, it's human stories, people who live here want to live and work in our town and in our county. So keep that in mind when you lower the millage rate.
Deborah Swanson. After that, Ann Samala and Hoyt Murphy.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and especially the citizens of St. Lucie County that have to take on the burden of the tax base here. While I understand the complexity and the gruelingness that must go into preparing the budget for the community here, we as homeowners, as well as business people, have budgets as well. And unfortunately, we are not in positions where we can just go to our bosses or go to our tenants or wherever the case might be and say, we need more money because we want to spend more money. It doesn't work that way. That's not real life for us, and quite frankly, it shouldn't be real life for you guys. I'm going to talk really from two different perspectives, and I understand it and I appreciate the slides and the presentation. But I'm going to talk to it about my perspective and what I went through when I got my trim notice. I'm comparing what the rates were last year, millage, what they are this year. But not only that, I'm looking at my taxable values and I'm looking at my market value. because for a lot of people, it might not make a difference. But for me, it makes a big difference, particularly owning commercial property. So I'm going to kind of come at this at two different ways. First of all, my home is homesteaded, but every year I'm pretty much getting a 3% increase. And for some, I'm grateful that sometimes it's only 3% when we have a great market. But it's still 3% on top of any other raises. And this, I have to tell you, I've been here 43 years. We've been a very, very generous community with everything. We've funded a port to buy port property. And some people maybe haven't been here that long to even remember that we had that on our tax bill so that the county could buy port property to develop it and to control what was developed there. We've funded schools, to build schools, a half cent for, 5%, half of a percent. We've now funded roads, which I quite frankly was against because I agree with Mark Gotts. What the purpose of government is to provide safety, security, infrastructure, not the foo-foo. The foo-foo is nice, but first give me what you're supposed to be giving me as a citizen. And roads is part of that. But we still did it, and the citizens had enough faith in you as our commissioners to do that and to spend it and not to renew. We just voted 1% for school tax. Now, granted, that's not your budget, but for somebody like me, it affects my budget. So I'm just going to give you some short numbers on my commercial. Because it's capped, the taxable value by state law, I had a 10% increase on the taxable value. But I had a 20.3% increase on my market value. So, and last year I had a 10% increase on my taxable value. So in 2 years I've had a 20% increase. I had a 13% increase in my market value last year. So now I'm up to 30.3% increase in my market value. Now, what difference does that make? A lot, because your school board is all based on your market value, not your taxable value. So to make it very short and simple, my taxes this year for my commercial property went up 15.96%. I assure you, my income is not going up 15.96%. I have rates locked in on my leases where it's based on the CPI, which runs 2.8 to maybe 3.3 in some years. So somebody's eating that money. I'm either passing it on to my tenants or I'm eating it. And let me tell you, you can only pass on so much to your tenants because, as Mr. Gott said, they can only charge certain amount, or they're not, whether it's a restaurant, you can only go up so much on food. Whether it's a goods or a service, you can only go up so much. And I've got mom and pop tenants. They're not these big corporations that are national corporations or have deep pockets. And for me to go up $21 a month on every one of them just because of taxes. And that's just part of my budget. Because like you, I have to deal with my whole budget, which is insurance, which is landscaping, which is now recycling, and the county dictating to me who I have to use to provide my trash service. Because when you guys, in your infinite wisdom, went for trash service for commercial people, my bill doubled. I wish to God I could go and collect whatever my budget is and say, this is what I want my budget to be. Now let me go and raise everybody's rates to collect it, and they're all going to stay there. Because guess what? You're going to start losing people here. This used to be an affordable community. It's not anymore. And people are going to remember, as you guys keep increasing and you come at us for the next 5% you want to increase for roads or for the river or for the beach and nourishment, whatever it might be, we're going to remember how you vote tonight. Trust me. I passed out, in closing, I just want to say, I passed out an article to all of you and to the administrator and this was very timely. This was an article that the Florida Association of Realtors sent, and I actually had to call them today because sometimes I'll save articles. I didn't save this one. And so I had to call them and say, I need you to email me the URL and for this. And I, just for the benefit of those that are here, and particularly those that are retired, will really relate to this. This came out August 26th of this year, and the survey was on older adults struggling with housing costs. 1 in 4 adults over age 45 say Florida is their top retirement state, but 1 in 3 is struggling with the cost of housing over the past year. Homeowners with lower incomes tended to report the highest housing cost burdens, but researchers found the problem across all income levels. Among those earning $20,000 to $40,000 a year, 42% struggled with housing costs, while 27% of those earning between $40,000 and $60,000 were in the same situation. Earners in the $60,000 to $80,000 and $80,000 to $100,000 income brackets reported burdens at 22 to 20% respectively, and even the highest income brackets weren't immune. 6% of older adults earning more than $100,000 per year said they found it difficult to keep up with housing costs over the past year. Well, I can tell you, I'm one of those older adults, and I'm in one of those brackets, and I'm having a hell of a time having to keep up with the costs that are going up because my income is not keeping up with it. So I really hope, like Commissioner Townsend, a couple of you will decide that you're fed up with it too, and just deal with your budget like the rest of us have to deal with our budgets. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Semiola, 14 Lake Vista Trail. I just have a question to ask. I want to know if the deficit, the massive deficit that this city and county have, is a contributing factor to the millage rate. Is that a major factor that is contributing to such a high rate throughout the state? Because you have a major deficit in this city, don't you? You don't?
Not in St. Lucie County. The city of Port St. Lucie does. Dr.
Mr. Tipton.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, and to the Speaker, our debt is very manageable, and the taxes that we're talking about this evening really are not going towards debt. They're going to our operations.
Thank you.
Good evening, Hoyt Murphy, 2400 South Ocean Drive. Next month, I will be a 60-year resident of St. Lucie County. Not to repeat anything that I heard tonight, I guess what I'm concerned in, we've had these 7 years of increasing property values, and that really is incumbent upon you to reduce those millage rates. Here's where I see the problem. We have this highest millage rate, one of the, if not the highest, one of the highest in the state of Florida. And there will be a time, because I remember back in 2009, 10, 11, sitting in these budget hearings, and it was a sad state of affairs, especially for employees, knowing that you were having to cut jobs and so forth. But when you're in those bad times, that's when you raise your millage rate. But it is so high now, and we will get to a time when we're not going to be able to keep getting these high increases in property values. You really, when property values are going up, millage rates need to go down. I'm not a fan of everything Port St. Lucie does, but at least they've done the right thing of getting those millage rates down. And you've really got yourself in a box with these high millage rates. And when things turn, I don't know, if you raise them again, you're already the highest in the state. I don't know if you want to set some kind of record for the country. That's one point. Second point, certainly bad for business and certainly bad for property values. And I'll try to give another good example. And I looked this up today, and I'm not going to use one of my properties, but let's say I have a shopping center in St. Lucie County, and everything's the same exact shopping center in Indian River County. Millage rate, depending if you use Mark's numbers, or I actually looked at some tax bills today, anywhere from 5 to 7 mills difference. in that same shopping center and you start applying that to the value, let's say it's worth $1 million, and I cap that that expense off my income, my value of that same shopping center, same exact shopping center, is either from $60,000 to a little over $100,000 less in St. Lucie County just because of the high tax rate. So I hate to say it because I'm in the business of, believe me, I am true, my blood bleeds St. Lucie County, but it's not good for business, and I beg you to try to figure a way to, I've heard some, even 1 cent reduction, but you got to get the millage rate under control because there will be a time when you've got to raise your millage rate, and you're not in a position to do that in the way you're sitting now. Thank you very much.
John Stallings, after that Karen Brunal, and then Ryan Binner.
Good evening, everyone. Madam Chairman. My name is John Stallings. I live at 2400 South Ocean Drive. I've owned property in St. Lucie County for over 20 years now. I've seen the county do some tremendous growth in that amount of time. I think I can attribute a lot of that success to individuals sitting up here tonight. One of the things I want to address tonight, and two of the things, is the millage rate. And the other thing that has really hit me hard this year, I did some estate planning, which caused me to retitle my properties. In the event of that retitling of those properties, I lost my 10% cap. Value of my property went to market. My taxes increased by 50%. There was no transfer of the property to another person. There was no transaction. There was no sale. I still control the properties. I just moved them for liability purposes and estate planning into LLCs. And I lost all my protections. And my tax bill went up 50%. On top of that now, I'm looking at this millage rate. I'm a landlord by trade. Somebody please explain to me how I can pass that on to my tenants. It's not going to happen. It means I'm going to have to eat it. I'm not being a landlord for the practice of it. I'm doing it to make money. This situation has made it almost impossible for me to continue to exist and make money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Bernald. I live in Palm Grove, which is a gated community for elderly housing. And it's 367 Perotis Lane is my address in Fort Pierce, which is the unincorporated part of the county. And I just want to speak to you on the property taxes going up and how it's the highest rate in the state. I just don't understand how this has happened. I've been here 21 years in Florida, in St. Lucie County, in the same house. And all the taxes do is keep going up and up and up. I don't feel that the county is being managed cost effectively. I I think there are many people that will be losing their houses due especially to the referendum mail-in vote. They didn't realize that their taxes would go up because of that. I'm hearing that so much in our community. We have 364 homes and 144 condos, and people are struggling now, and it's very difficult. And the school board, from what I'm looking at, it's very, very top-heavy. I don't understand why we need the superintendents to have assistant superintendents, and they have secretaries who have secretaries, and it's absolutely ridiculous. I think that we need to concentrate and manage the school department better with more people concentrating on the school teachers who need their pay. And I don't think it's being run very well. So I would just like to say, I hope you look at this budget, and I hope you're able to lower it so that our taxes can go down, so that people don't lose their houses. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening, Madam Chair and County Commissioners. My name is Ryan Benner. I live at 11101 Ridge Avenue in Fort Pierce, Florida. I've been a resident of St. Lucie County off and on since '95, and my family's had businesses here since 1996. I'm here tonight to discuss the proposed budget and the opportunity for each one of you commissioners to take a step towards lowering the property tax burden on each of the residents of St. Lucie County. It is mentioned on Tuesday that the per county assessed property tax per capita is in line with the state average, which is true. It's actually slightly lower based on the 2008 numbers I was looking at. But what was not mentioned was that the per capita income in St. Lucie County is ranked 35th out of 67 counties. All right, the per capita income rate, according to Tax Watch in 2018, was $36,000 per capita in St. Lucie County. If you look to our neighbor to the north, it was $68,000 per capita. If you look to our neighbor to the south, it was $73,000 per capita. That's, I mean, rough numbers, but that's almost double what we have per capita income here in the county. So to be clear, we're #1 in the state in overall millage rate, as stated, and we have a higher effective tax rate compared to other Florida counties when it comes to property taxes. In the past 5 years alone, we've seen the certified values increase over 37%. That's tremendous growth in values and in tax revenues. With 7 straight years of property value increases for the property appraised values, they've surpassed expectations, and we've even seen the city of PSL has lowered their millage rate yet again this year, and they're still seeing a 6% increase in overall tax revenue, according to the TC Palm article published on September 24th, 2019. I'm not here saying lower your overall tax revenue. I'm simply stating that let's compromise on the the increase in tax revenue. With the $12 million increase to the general fund this year alone, and the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee suggesting a 1% reduction spending for each department seems like a pretty fair compromise to me. Just because property values went up and your tax revenue went up doesn't mean you just spend. If the commission's goal was to get back to the peak in the general fund revenue, which was around 2007, which generated around $205 million in just the general fund tax revenues, that doesn't seem fiscally responsible to set that as the overall goal. Because obviously that was in a housing bubble, which ended in what some of the commissioners will describe to you as a depression. And that type of spending ended up giving us a additional homestead exemption, which was enacted in 2008, which then effectively lowered the tax revenues because they were getting out of hand. Now, additional homestead, I'm not up here saying we need more homestead exemptions, because all that does is pass the tax burden from primary residences over to commercial and investment property owners, like we've heard tonight. So we trust that the commission will act responsible towards with our tax dollars, pay respectable wages to our public employees and staff, and provide the services local government is responsible for. But please don't look at the increase and just spend it all away. As with all plans, they require tweaking and adaptation based on reality over expectations. So keep in mind that higher taxes are a burden on property owners and renters. I'm a mortgage professional, just like Emmett spoke on earlier. When I'm qualifying buyers for houses in St. Lucie County, they are struggling to qualify because they can bring me one $200,000 house. That tax bill could be $1,800 a year. They could bring me another $200,000 house, and they could bring me a $4,500 tax bill that year. Similar houses, one was homesteaded, one wasn't. Most buyers that I'm dealing with in that price range won't qualify for that house with the higher tax bill. So you're going to make people not able to buy homes. And when it comes to investment properties, my in-laws own one. Their tax bill's over $5,000 on it. That's an insane amount of money for a frame home built in the 80s. So any increase in taxes doesn't just hurt homeowners, it hurts commercial people and renters, both businesses and residential people. So any cut in any spending won't fix it overnight, but at least you guys could take a step in signaling to the residents of St. Lucie County that you are looking out for their long-term financial interest and not looking just to spend every penny that comes into your coffers due to property value increases. Thanks.
James Cox. After that, Anna Gomez Malata, and then Travis Haig.
My name is James Cox, 4679 South 25th Street, Fort Pierce. These higher taxes are just taxing me right out of my home. Lower the millage rate, help senior citizens like me. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ana Gomez Malata.
There you go.
I'm at 210 Southwest Ridgecrest in Port St. Lucie. And I'm asking you to drop our rates. And I have 3 points. The first one is sort of anecdotal. I had a conversation with my accountant Monday, but it's not exactly what you're thinking. He was telling me he and his wife located a house in Port St. Lucie, loved it. They were going to buy it. They were practically ready to close. And then he saw the proposed tax rates. So they bought a house in Lighthouse Point in Broward County, Florida instead. Now, those of you who know a little bit about real estate and how the lion lies in Florida, know that Lighthouse Point is a very expensive community. And he was getting more for his money, for his tax money there. My second point is that, like polls, numbers are highly manipulable. But the one very interesting number that I heard come out of this presentation today, this evening, is the fact that we're spending $42 million more this year than last year. And I'm kind of wondering, on what? We can't have that many more prisoners over at St. Lucie County Jail. The jail was built for so many people. If it's overcrowded, the feds will come in and force us to release nonviolent offenders. They've done it elsewhere. They would do it to us. So how many more prisoners are eating those horrible trays of jail food? And medical attention? Oh, let's not go there. So exactly what is that on? And why all the... See, I fear polls and I fear numbers because, like I said, they're manipulable. But however, I do realize that the services we all require and we all enjoy do have to be paid for, and they're paid for out of taxation. So here's what I would suggest. Instead of deciding what each agency wants to spend, adding it all up, and raising the millage accordingly, which seems to be the preference here, why don't we instead lower the tax rate and put something like a citizens review, a citizens study group together, voluntary, it costs almost nothing, into making suggestions to increase the tax base. That way, instead of feeding off the goose that lays the golden egg, or should I say geese, and I'm looking at all of you, well, how about increasing the tax base, the number of people who pay taxes? So that's going to increase anyway, considering the number of housing units I see down the Tradition Parkway every time I drive that way. How about building up the tax base? Dollar store isn't going to do it. However, being more business friendly would. And this, from what I've been able to tell in the last 6 years I've been here, this is a singularly business unfriendly community. I talked to a lady whose business I spotted and I've been texting my relatives and friends all over the place about. She said she was paying for rent and all, everything that you have to pay for in a business for about 6 months before she could actually open her doors. Why? Because there was this permit and that permit and this requirement and that requirement. Ladies and gentlemen, we're killing business. She employs 3 people in there. That's 3 people that have a job. That's increasing our tax base. So let's get a group together. Let's not spend $1 million on it because everything seems to carry a price tag like that. But let's make some suggestions to increase the business tax base by making this community more business friendly. And in the meantime, please lower our tax rates. Thank you.
Travis Haig. After that will be Paul Shaw, followed by Vicky Rodriguez.
Hi, my name is Travis Haig. I live at 6789 South Indian River Drive, and I had an opportunity to live over in Tradition before I moved out to the Drive. And it was kind of funny because even before I moved out there, my taxes only went up about $600 per year. With the added bond that they have out there in Tradition for taxes, plus the taxes that we have in our house in Indian River Drive, right now I'm spending about $600 a month just in property taxes alone, not including interest, extra insurance, mortgage, et cetera. So it's a pretty high tax bill that I get to see every month, especially with trying to raise kids. One of the most interesting things is that with any business, when you are an employee and you go and you ask your boss for a raise, your boss is going to go through and evaluate you and determine what kind of job you've done, right? Whether you're a great contributor, whether you give back to the community, you give back to the company, you're a valuable asset, et cetera. And he's going to determine what kind of raise that you're going to get. Right now, we are #1 in the state of Florida because we do have the highest tax rate. But unfortunately, as far as growing businesses, having other assets like a port or an airport or natural resources that we can go through and leverage to be able to raise that tax revenue, those are the things that are going to go through and help raise up that revenue. Increasing taxes, it's going to cast a burden upon us as well as additional new people that decide to move into the county. And it's very important to go through and attract these new businesses and new sources of revenue that you can go through and generate more tax revenue as a result of it. The more population, you spread that load out over more people and more businesses, you're going to be able to lower the tax rate effectively. Right now, we have that extremely high tax rate because we have that low volume of cash that's basically coming in. So a lot of us have to take on that burden as a result of it. So it's important to go through that, it's important to have operating costs and be able to run everything effectively, but also being able to look at it efficiently as well. It's really important that I think that we go through and lower our tax rate, and that's my vote, to help out not only the senior citizens that are in fixed income, but also businesses to help spur on that tax revenue. Lower tax revenue is going to allow them to hire more people, work more hours. And if you think about it, if you raise the actual proposed taxable value of a house, now you raise up that millage rate, now that's a double-edged sword. Sure, you gave all the teachers a big pay raise, or a small pay raise, but now you've increased their tax rate. Now it negates that raise that they just received because now they're paying that in property taxes if they own a house. So it's just something to take into consideration of all those unintended consequences that are come when you go through and you make a decision one way or the other. Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Shaw. I'm a 30-year resident in St. Lucie County now. I'm in favor of you reducing the millage rate. I don't have a long speech here. I didn't analyze like some folks. They got some very good statistics, and if these are the facts, then and I guess you don't really, and you check them, and you have nothing to dispute the facts with. I think you might want to consider making changes to the millage rate. I learned quite a bit here tonight, actually, and from several speakers here, and that's a good thing. One thing is that estate planning, sooner or later that hits all of you, all of us, and suddenly you get whacked here with like a 50% taxable increase here, just when you think you're ready to have it nice, have it made, sort of. That's pretty much all I have to say, except that there was one item here. This is a public hearing, and I guess the public hearing is a legal requirement to this meeting and to this item. I've noticed there was some attempt was made to reduce or denounce or stop what was called an outburst. I think the participation of the public is part of the public hearing. So if there's applause, I think that would be the participation and is part of the public hearing. And I don't know if that you can legally reduce that or remove that. If you're not sure on that item, whether that is legally so, you might want to get an opinion on that, either from your attorney or from Tallahassee, as to how that exactly affects a meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, Mr. Shaw, the public certainly has a right to speak. We are trying to hold a meeting. I want everybody's input, but as we respect you with all of your comments and your time, we ask that there to be some respect for everyone.
There was
So
no
thank you.
disrespect by anyone.
This is a business meeting.
Yeah, well,
So,
the
thank
applause
you.
is public
Thank you,
comment.
sir.
It might be beneficial because you can gauge it where it
Your
lies.
public comment, your public comment is very important to us.
Well,
So
that is
that
public
is
comment too.
your public comment.
Thank you.
Is there a Vicky Rodriguez? Kathy Roberts. After that, Chris Thompson, followed by Elaine Vangas.
Hi, my name is Kathy Roberts. I live at 534 Southeast Euclid Lane in Port St. Lucie. I'd like to pose a question to everybody. How many remember the booming market? How many remember when it crashed? Do we remember all those empty houses that wasn't collecting property taxes?
Ms. Roberts, would you address the board, please? Thank you.
Do you all remember that we're all now paying for those property taxes of all those houses that were empty? But now those houses are full. Now there's people in there paying property taxes, income taxes, every kind of tax. The other thing, I just read on September 17th, one of the gentlemen presented about salaries going up. I saw on Treasure Coast News, the mayor is proposing a 61% pay raise. How many of you get a 61% pay raise? How many of you get a 61% pay raise? We don't know what you earn. Maybe it should be a lot lower, like us. City Council wants a 36% pay raise. How in the heck is that fair? Is that part of our tax bill? And you were talking about mosquito control. When are they coming? Because I thought mosquitoes were supposed to have we could have health issues. They have not been down my street ever this whole entire year, at all. And I'm paying for that in my taxes. I'd like to know how you can sit here and propose a pay increase. I've been here 15 and a half years. I've seen the highs and I've seen the lows. I'm proposing to move out of this county. I've already started looking because I can't stand what's going on with this county with your increases. This is not even a wealthy county. Palm Beach County pays less than we do. Tampa pays less than we do. Miami and Miami-Dade pays less than we do. Where did Port St. Lucie get their figures from to be the highest millage rate in the state? I'd like to know that answer. And I'm sure all of you would like to.
members of the commission, Madam Chairman. My name is Christopher Thompson, a citizen of Port St. Lucie. I live off of Bayshore Boulevard near Bayshore Elementary School. We're here talking about taxes tonight. I just want to remind the commission that you have a sacred responsibility. You have a stewardship over the sweat of the citizens' brows. You have people that have, humble citizens of this community, have come before you tonight begging you to lower their taxes. They're not being greedy. They're struggling. They're not here tonight. The citizens here, they're not here tonight to hear about some big grandiose projects that the commission is touting. They want to know how they can pay for school supplies, how the elderly can afford their prescription medicine. They want to know, the mothers in this room want to know how they're going to afford their daughter's ballet or cheerleading practice or basketball for the young men. That's what they want to know, how they're going to pay that. You can help them tonight if you lower their taxes. Now, one thing you may have noticed, and it's hard not to notice it here, there's been dozens of people that have come up before you tonight. Not one single person has said, you know what, please do us a favor and raise our taxes. Not one single person has said, you know what, keep our taxes high. Good job, right? Every single person in this room is begging you from the bottom of their soul. And again, they're not mad at you. They're humbly begging you to lower their taxes, okay? If this is representative of the people that you're supposed to be serving and representing, who are you representing by keeping our taxes high? Right? I mean, you've seen the citizens have taken time out of their night. I sure have. I could be at watching my daughter play volleyball tonight or watching my other daughter practice piano. Instead, I'm here because these are important foundational issues for the citizens of this community. Now, earlier this week on Tuesday, one of the members of this commission said, and I quote, you can get the transcript, when someone tells you that we have the highest millage rate, that's a correct statement. We don't even need to bring any sources with us today, and you can source that. It's already been an admission by the council or by the commission. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about how property taxes affect the citizens of this county and prospective residents of St. Lucie County. Now, some of this has been alluded to earlier. When people look for a place to live, home price is not the only factor. It's one of many factors in what goes into something called home affordability. Home affordability includes things like mortgage interest rates. This is why in the 90s, when the interest rates were at 12%, people weren't buying houses. It also includes factors like home insurance and, of course, property taxes. Since these factors work together, often as one goes up, another goes down. For instance, when there's low interest rates, people are buying homes. When there's high interest rates, they don't buy. Similarly, when property taxes are too high, people are not buying homes or are more reluctant to buy homes, okay? When people come to St. Lucie County, they see these low home prices, but as some of the people here have attested to, then they see what their monthly bill is going to be. And that takes into effect the property taxes we're paying, which are are the highest in the state. Now, as I said before, these factors go in conjunction. If you lower the property taxes, guess what's going to happen? Most likely, the home values will go up. Home values are inversely proportional to interest rates. It's the same thing with taxes. Our home values will go up. That's a good thing for us, okay? Now, if you lower our millage rate, though, and I know you're concerned, you members of the board that are reluctant to lower our taxes, you're concerned about where the revenue is going to come from. Well, as you see, sometimes it happened in the JFK administration, it happened during the Reagan administration and other administrations, that when you lower taxes, that spurs growth, that spurs economic activity. It's the same thing here, that if you lower our property taxes, there's a good chance that you can still recoup the lost revenue because our home values will go up. And those assessments will produce the lost revenue with the added incentive that you also get a higher priced house. Now I want to show you in a comparison, how do we compare to our neighbors? I looked this up on smartasset.com. It's a website for predicting home taxes. Annual property taxes on a $250,000 home in PSL are roughly $3,805. For the same priced house in Palm City, taxes are $2,790, almost $1,000 less. In Vero Beach to the north, property taxes for that home would be even less, $2,355. That's 27% lower in Palm City and almost 40% lower in Vero. Now, we got to ask ourselves, why do we have these high tax rates? It's obvious, because we have so much tax and spend liberalism at its worst, reckless spending in this county. Some of this reckless spending was done by members of this commission while they were on the Port St. Lucie City Council. Some people on this commission voted for the boondoggles like Digital Domain, City Center, VGTI, Torrey Pines. And those same tax and spend liberals are now trying to keep our taxes high and spend those hard-earned dollars here at the commission level as well. Our taxes are too darn high. It's an outrage. And I urge the commissioners to think about the residents of this community before patting special interests, and please lower our taxes. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eileen Vargas, and I'm running for State Representative District 84, most of this county. I'm a real estate broker from way back in Miami, and I saw the changes to the skyline, I saw the increase in values, and I also saw the increase in taxes on properties. I remember when interest rates were at 18%, and I had to find ways, and me and other brokers had to find ways to wrap mortgages. Banks don't let you do that anymore. So that's out the window. Then there was the soft market that came and went. We had to depend on outsiders to come in to invest in Miami. Those flush with cash. This is not this community. These are hardworking people, upstanding citizens, that every penny counts. And what does it count for? We're talking about the national average of cost in the country is 7.3% higher in St. Lucie County. But wait a minute, what are we talking about? We're talking about transportation. How am I going to get to work to earn the money to pay for my necessities? Food. I need to eat well, so therefore I need to spend more of my budget on food. Medical care. What shall I do? We have an aging population. Unfortunately, they will need more care than what they anticipated. Those costs aren't going down. That's a federal issue that we're all too familiar with. And of course, housing. Housing is the cost of the property, the insurance, the upkeep, and those taxes that we've been speaking about this evening. You have people that are in the business of selling homes or financing homes. What are they going to do when they can no longer move properties along as they should be able to? Having said that, for the last 10 months, I've been walking throughout the community since I am running for State Representative District 84. And I've heard people who said, please help us. We can't stand anymore, and they're practically in tears. And they say, well, what am I going to do? I need medicine. One lady told me, well, look, I love my little dog. I'm going to get his medicine first. That is pitiful. That is developing country conversation. Not here, ladies and gentlemen. The other thing is, maybe you have to take someone and you don't even know into your home to help you pay the mortgage with a spare room. Or you have to take a family member in. that can no longer afford to have the sanctity of their own home, the privacy, the privilege. They may have to sell their vehicle, down to one vehicle, 2 or 3 working people, a strain on the family. And then the other thing is people will lose their homes, lose them, and there's no chance to do it over again. I help people get their financial house in order. And I tell them today, if you live like no one else today, tomorrow you'll be living like no one else. But they don't stand a chance. Please, rule with your conscience. You are people that live here too. You have neighbors, you go to the supermarket. Help them help themselves by lowering the taxes. You have the power. Thank you so much.
Jake Sanders. After that, Joshua Mays, followed by Sasha Dadon Bana.
Good evening. Hello. First, I want to thank our county commission and our county staff for your hard work and attention in running a tight ship. The county commission, you have done your work bipartisanly, and St. Lucie County sets yourself apart in doing things, working with people of all political stripes. I know that despite the political theater here tonight, our St. Lucie County government is operating at a budget that is less than it was in fiscal year 2007 to 2011, and with 182 less full-time employees, even with a 27% growth in population. I know that despite the candidates in tow, it is election season, that despite these diatribes on the millage rate and the decision to focus on an arbitrary part of the tax equation, not the final product, our aggregate millage rate is smack dab in the middle, along with our county taxes per capita, which those are the things that affect people. Those are the things that we should be looking at. I don't understand how people would make the misrepresentation that we are the highest taxes in the state just because of the millage rate. You've made St. Lucie County an incredibly affordable place to live, and the voters here agree with you and have backed our investment, approving initiatives to properly fund school SROs, teacher pay, and infrastructure repair. I know this being on the Citizens Budget Committee. Unfortunately, I was not surprised when I heard our unanimous bipartisan recommendation twisted by grandstanders in a naked attempt for people to lay the groundwork for their political campaigns. I can understand that those who have never faced a general election are scared to truly face the voters for the first time. And you can see quite an overlap in those campaign supporters here tonight and those maligning the county. But let me give you the facts. The CBC made a recommendation early in the process to decrease spending and increase reserves. We did not include anything about lowering the tax rate. I speak tonight in agreement with Mr. Mucklow, who we do not agree on everything. We're people of different parties, and we don't agree on every issue. I do hope we look, and I understand these expenses. I understand the millions in unpaid FEMA reimbursements that we have been waiting on. He said it right. It is a matter of when, not if, a disaster strikes, and we do need to increase the reserves. I cannot understand how anyone who would claim to be fiscally responsible would sit here and advocate for you guys to not do that and instead would say, decrease the millage rate. We need people here in St. Lucie County are too smart to fall for this divisive and reckless politics that is very clear is not getting anything done. It may be the majority opinion in this room right now, but I do not think this is representative of our citizens. And I think people who are misrepresenting that will have only the voters to answer to on election day. There are bipartisan solutions to be had working together to create jobs and additional revenue at our port and to save money and decrease the population of our overcrowded jail. And I wish everyone here was tonight talking about these things. These solutions are not advanced by electoral games that come just in time for election season. The voters know better. Thank you.
Hello to the County Commission. My name is Joshua Mays. I'm from 2821 Southeast Pace Drive in the city of Port St. Lucie. And I come to you tonight just basically asking, like most everybody else, to lower the millage rate. You know, you can talk about different financial reasons why. My family owns property in the county, and we pay quite a bit of property taxes. And it's hard when you write that check as a business owner. And it would certainly be beneficial, I know, to our business if the property tax rate was lowered. The other thing that I would say is on principle. You know, I haven't heard anybody talk about principle tonight too much, but the principle that my grandfather always taught me was the most important part of any conversation. And the principle that I believe is taxation is theft. Now, you guys need the taxation to fund the government, and so that's there, but that comes from us, and it really hurts our way of life. You know, basically, I wake up at 5 a.m. 6 days a week, or excuse me, I'm at work 5 a.m. 6 days a week instead of being home with my 3-year-old or my 1-year-old, which I would do if I had more money. A lot of my money gets taken by the government, which is, you know, that's part of the system and it is what it is. But what I would like for you guys to know as a citizen in your county is that every dollar you spend, you know, it comes from somewhere. It comes from somebody getting up at 5 a.m. and going and sweating and working all day and sacrificing being away from their family. And the principle of it, you know, the property values are low because we're poor. And the only way to get out of that is to lower our expenses now and create savings, create investment in our county so that we can build ourselves. But that's a 5-year plan, and oftentimes we don't have those 5-year plans in that regard. But I would definitely say lowering the millage rate will increase property values. And even if 1 or 2 years you don't get the full tax rate in time, like they say, Martin County property values are higher. If you go look at the houses comparable, they have more value. We could create that value for ourselves as citizens in this county if we lowered our tax rate. Thank you.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, my name is Sasha Devan-Bana. I'm a local attorney. I'm a landlord. I'm a resident of Port St. Lucie, and I reside in St. Lucie County off of Tulip. This is an issue that affects everyone, regardless of the political ambiance you subscribe to. This is not a political gimmick. This has to do with people's lives. It has to do with people's businesses. It has to do with every aspect of our being. You've heard people come before you today, some of which are seniors, some of which are landlords, others of which are tenants, and they all are pleading with you to ask you to reduce their taxes. And you have a very important decision to make tonight. And just about everybody who has stood before you today has asked for the very same thing, to give them the ability to continue to sustain themselves, to sustain their children by reducing their taxes. Our taxes are the highest in the state. And when you factor in property values and you look at the effective property tax rate, St. Lucie County still has the highest property tax rate in the state. The county has had several events in the past couple of years which make a reduction in the millage not simply justified, but the clear right thing to do. The passage of the sales tax, increased home values, the defeat of Amendment 1 are all examples. I concur with Emmett, who spoke to you previously. It makes it difficult for people to buy a house here when they're looking at taxes, and they have to factor that into their escrow. But not only that, I mean, you have investors who are looking to flip a house or be a landlord, and they too are having challenges as to whether to purchase in this county or not because they too are looking at the tax rate. Government must do as our family does and live within its means. Our citizens have elected you to serve, and it is a privilege to serve this community. And they're asking you for one thing tonight, and they're asking you to reduce their taxes. Be their voice. Represent them. That's why you're here. You all represent different districts. They're outlined underneath your name. And I guarantee you that everybody, one person who has spoke to here tonight, has probably represented each of those districts. So represent them tonight. Vote to reduce the tax, because if you don't vote to reduce the tax, the problem's going to be that the property values continue to increase. And even though the worst case scenario is if you don't reduce it, they're still going to have to pay because there's going to be an increase in property. So we have to reduce the taxes to make it livable so that people, again, can sustain themselves here in this county. Thank you for your time, and I pray that you hear the voices tonight and reduce the taxes.
Kim Slepp, followed by Aaron Anderson, followed by Anthony Bona.
Should I wait?
You can go ahead.
Ma'am, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Kim Slepp. I own a house in Fort Pierce, Florida, between US 1 and Indian River Drive. I've always been embarrassed to say that I live in the city of Fort Pierce because the city of Fort Pierce is a dump. And I sit here and I hear that we have the highest tax rate in Florida, and my city is a dump. I have had an abandoned home on my street for 10 years. The whole Fort Pierce city has cleaned up the downtown area with shops and etc. But if we are getting the largest tax, why are our children not reading? Why is the city, the Fort Pierce police don't even protect you? They don't deserve any tax money. Now, the gentleman here said about the jail and the doctors, and he lightly mentioned HANDS. Well, HANDS is a nonprofit. The doctors come in and they donate their time, and that time is tax. They write it off on their taxes. So they need to start thinking out of the box a little bit in the jail, and that would save a lot of money right there. And there are people that would want to get involved donating their time, doctors and nurses, because I've kind of talked about it with some other people. And I was on the Planning and Zoning Board for a few years when I first came in the city, because I told Mayor Benton that I wanted to be mayor one day to change the city, to clean it up. He suggested I get on the Planning and Zoning Board to get to know my city, because I come from Lake Lanier, Georgia, which is well manicured and very nice, nothing like Fort Pierce. So I had the elderly come to me, crying to me about their taxes going up and how they could lose their homes. Again, you've heard that tonight. I've actually seen it. I'm semi-retired, so I come from, again, Lake Lanier, Forsyth County, Georgia, a $300,000+ home. So my taxes were around $2,000, and a lot of it went to my schools. So when I came here, I bought a house, paid cash, and I budgeted my taxes again, like everyone else does, but it's by the year. So if I don't have a mortgage, it was easier for me to think, okay, $700 a year's not bad. But I see a lot of wrongdoings going on. For example, the eminent domain building. It was, from what I understand, people interested in buying it. It was given to a church that doesn't have to pay taxes and does not bring in employees on a regular basis for hiring. So, and then it's on people's tax bill under the miscellaneous. It was 800 and something, now it's gone down to 600 and something, but majority of the Port St. Lucie people don't even know they're paying for that debt that whoever put Port St. Lucie in. Then I didn't know that we paid the largest taxes in Port St. Lucie. That's a shame. Absolute shame. Where's this money going? Why is there a 6,000 poverty area that's total trash that the police tell me to stay out of? Okay? Why do I hear gunshots in my neighborhood? Why am I not protected? And I'm not. And I have a lot of proof on that. You're not protected in Fort Pierce, Florida. So again, I'd like for everyone to be happy, and the taxes get lowered. It does hurt the elderly tremendously because they are on a budget. I am now qualified as an elderly. I'm 55. So, but it's the 61 and plus year olds that get this guaranteed income from Social Security that actually depend on their taxes staying low. So if you could help us keep our taxes down, clean up Fort Pierce, and utilize that money in a good way, I would appreciate it, and I'm sure others would too. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Erin Anderson. I live at 641 Southwest Fair Avenue in Port St. Lucie. I moved to St. Lucie County 2 years ago from Broward County. Bought a home 6 months ago, and I was really surprised at how high the taxes were. Coming from Broward County, where the properties are worth more, there's more going on there, there's more businesses, higher income. I was shocked to see how much I was going to be paying. So as a fairly new homeowner and citizen, I have a few questions. The first is, since this is the highest millage rate under the general county fund, what exactly does the general fund fund? I saw on the presentation there was like some 5 categories or something, but is there somewhere online where the public can go to see exactly where this money is going and what you're spending it on? Also, what is fine and forfeiture? I've never heard that term before, so would like some clarification on that. Another question is, since you have a larger tax base every year, I've been here 2 years now, and I see all the new construction coming in everywhere. I mean, from retail buildings to townhouses to single-family homes, combined with the fact that a lot of the county administration transactions are now done online, I would think that would help maybe reduce some of the FTEs that you do have. Is there any plans to lower the millage rate instead of raising it every year? And another question that I have is there a structure or reasoning behind how you put out referendums to raise taxes? Because the sales tax was done during a general election, but then the teacher pay raise was done as a mail-in. So I'm just wondering, I saw some inconsistency there and just curious why. And also, are there any future referendums to raise taxes on your, radar? And will it be a mail-in or will it be during a general election? So I know you're not going to answer those questions probably right now, but just putting it out there. So in conclusion, I guess just echoing what everyone else except one person has already said, I really think that you should lower the millage rate because we elect you guys to represent our interests, and it's pretty obvious that the majority of people would like to see lower taxes. So, thank you.
Is that, ma'am, if you'll hold, I think she's got a budget book for you. We're going to take a 10-minute break. I'm sorry. Do we have somebody else in the queue? I'm sorry, Mr. Bonner, were you already called up? I didn't realize that. Okay, after you, we'll take a break.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Anthony Bana. I reside at 844 Southwest Tulip Boulevard. I had the opportunity to give some remarks the other morning, so some of these will be the same, but there are some updates and some new information that's come in. And one thing I specifically want to address tonight, the one person who came up here in favor of keeping the millage rate the same is a political operative. The one person who called this political theater is a political operative. The one person who said that the residents here tonight who are making their case is a political operative. And for him to come here and call all of you, everyone in this room, political theater is political theater. I am not here maligning this county. I love this county. I serve this county. I work for this county. I have a disagreement on this issue with some members of the commission. And so to attack people for coming out and showing up at a public meeting is disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. We need to encourage people to come and get involved in the process. That's not political. That's being an American and a good citizen. So I am grateful for every one of you that are here tonight, and please do not be discouraged by anyone that calls you political theater. Now, last year, I had the incredible honor of being a commissioner in this county. And as a new commissioner, I learned that we had the highest millage rate in the state, a fact that was admitted to by my former colleague. And when I learned that information, I immediately wanted to do something about it. I found out that we had better than expected property values that year, property value increase that year, than we thought we were going to have when we built the budget. So I proposed giving a very small 1/20th of a mil property tax reduction that year. But in 2018, there was a lot of uncertainty. We needed the sales tax for infrastructure, and I was a big advocate for that. Amendment 1 was on the ballot, and voters might have voted themselves an additional $25,000 homestead exemption. How would the county replace the revenue if that passed? We were also left with the responsibility of funding school resource deputies at the 90% level because the school board couldn't. Now the school board is funding those. And so as a team player and balancing the interests of this community, I voted to leave the tax rate the same as we awaited those outcomes. That's bipartisanship. That's making a compromise. A vote tonight with all of those things certain, with Amendment 1 failing, the sales tax passed, and the school board now funding the school resource deputies and another year of better than expected property values, is nothing short of extremism. We can absolutely give our citizens a break. This is not about reserves. A reduction doesn't affect the 5-year plan. If voters passed Amendment 1, we'd have still followed the 5-year plan. If voters didn't pass the sales tax, we'd have found a way to follow the 5-year plan. If property values came in at 3%, we'd have still found a way to follow the 5-year plan. We can stay faithful to budget stabilization while significantly reducing the millage. Some mock or minimize what even a 1/4 mil or a 1/10 of a mil might do for property owners and families. To them, I say it's important we take incremental steps in the right direction. The Port St. Lucie City Council has reduced their rate 4 years in a row. Their work is making a difference. Let me remind you, even if the county reduces the millage, citizens will still be paying more this year significantly than they were last year as a result of the 1 mil increase for the school board and the rise in our property values. And if you have any doubt whether this is a county or city problem, consider this. Of the 10 largest Florida cities, Port St. Lucie has the 3rd lowest millage rate. When you combine city millage rates with their county tax rate, which this body is responsible for, Port St. Lucie skyrockets to having the highest millage on the list, from 3rd lowest to the highest. And finally, I'm going to talk about the Citizens Budget Committee's recommendation this year. They recommended a 1% decrease in spending. Last week, I submitted a public records request asking for any documents which discuss a plan or proposal to implement the recommendation in whole or in part. I received a response, but I did not receive any plan from each department to implement that recommendation. So yes, that recommendation was ignored, and I'd like to know why. Serving as a commissioner is an incredible responsibility. I know you balance many priorities, including our public safety, community services, and infrastructure, to name a few. Reducing the millage can be accomplished without sacrificing our essential priorities. Please, when you vote, do not forget the taxpayer or risk the county's credibility with our citizens who've been so generous. That's the real tragedy of this. If you fail to reduce the millage rate tonight, the next time we ask for money and we need it, we're not going to get it. That's the real tragedy. I believe that we need significant property tax relief this year. I believe that we could reduce it by $0.5 or more. But even 1/10 of a mil or 1/4 of a mil is progress in the right direction. It shows the citizens that you've heard them, not that you're dismissing them as political theater. So I ask you to, when you vote tonight, please keep everything that you've heard from the people in mind. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, before we take a break, it's come up a lot tonight about the fine and forfeiture. So could Mr. Tipton please explain what the fine and forfeiture is? I think that would kind of expedite some things a little bit. If you could just tell everybody here what it is, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Townsend, when we talk about the property taxes, they are split into actually several different categories. When we talk about the general fund category, that is generally general government operations. So there are different flavors of general government. It could be parks, it could be libraries, but it could be facilities. It's a general government operation. When we talk about fine and forfeiture, that is a portion of the property tax that is dedicated to public safety. So that is not just the sheriff's office, but it includes emergency management, it includes our radio systems, the court system, and so it includes a lot of different things, but it's all kind of public safety focused. And so that's primarily the difference between those two categories.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will be taking a 10-minute break. Thank you. You're resuming the budget hearings for this evening?
Nice meeting you.
Madam Secretary, do you have any other cards?
No, Madam Chair.
Is there anybody else who wishes to address this board? Yes, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Danielle Norval. I'm at 1206 Driftwood Lane in Fort Pierce. My husband's family is multi-generational here in St. Lucie County. Almost all of us still live here in St. Lucie County. We are raising our children here in St. Lucie County. The first thing my husband and I did when we got married was we put together a budget. We learned to live in that budget. As soon as something would become outside of our means, we either had to make more money or we had to sell something off. We didn't get to go to our parents, we didn't get to go to our neighbors, we didn't get to go to our friends and ask for a handout. We try to do our very best to support local. When we need new tires on our cars, we go to the local guy. We don't go to the big box companies and the corporations. When we need to go and buy clothes, we do our best to shop local. We try to put our money back into this local business and government here. I believe in supporting our local communities. That being said, my children do not go to our local schools. We pay for them to go to private school because I don't believe that our public school is good enough. Again, you're asking for higher amounts in a school that is not rated high enough, in my opinion, for the amount that they're getting. We have parks here that when I take my children to the parks, they ask me specifically, can we go to Stewart, Mommy? We don't like the parks here. They have shade. They have nicer equipment. The school board is building a brand new facility. Midway Road has been under construction for 5 years. I can't tell you how many tires I have had plugged because of all the construction on Midway Road. Today in TC Palm, there was an article that the courthouse now wants to be rebuilt at $142 million. I'll repeat that, $142 million for a new courthouse. Again, my husband and I live on a budget. We want to put our children in baseball, dance, swim lessons. But when I don't have the money to do that, it is time for us to learn to trim the fat. We sell off things that we no longer need. We downsize our home if we need to. We do whatever means necessary. I'm asking you, the county, to do what needs to be done in reducing the budget, learning to live within a means of a budget, just as every other family has learned to live in here. Whether you're elderly or you're a young family like myself, we're also trying to teach our children how to learn to live on a budget. Please help us set a good example. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the board? Seeing no one, close the public hearing.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this takes us then to Agenda Item 4D. Commissioners, for Agenda Item 4D, it is recommended that the Board of County Commissioners discuss the final fiscal year 2019-2020 millage rates and budget. Any changes to the millage rates under this item will be recomputed, announced, and adopted then under Item 4E.
Any questions, discussion?
Madam Chair, for discussion, Mr. Tipton, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We know, and it's been announced several times in the past, you know, when we go through, when I say we, I do that collectively, but as the at the staff level, with you as the leading it. Could you tell me if you happen to recall when January, as you're calling in each of your departments, what that total request came in at for this year?
My recollection was that there was about $12 million in unfunded requests. I don't remember the exact total.
That
but
was
out of our general fund and final forfeiture
okay. Well,
funds.
we'll go with the 12 million, 10 to 12. I'll even go 10. That was cut right off the bat, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Before it even made it to our July workshops.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I bring that up for several reasons, and I'm going to go a little history lesson here. I've had the honor and the privilege, the tears and the smiles of being able to say I have represented within this county for 17 years. Start my 18th year in November, and I could not be more blessed. So during that time, there's been a lot of good times and bad times. And I'm going to take probably more than 5 minutes, Madam Chair. But I think we all need to go through a little bit of history lesson, especially for those that may not have been here as I have for my entire life. When I was first given the privilege of representing the citizens of this county, it was in 1998. And at that time, our unemployment was extremely high. I don't recall it off the top of my head. But what stood out the most to me was the fact in my very first budget year, which would have been 1999, because by the time I was elected, the budget for that year was already made. This county only had $3 million in its total reserves. Total. Everything. That wasn't just a budget. And Mr. Tipton, I'm sure when you were first hired, you had poured over all of our financials and budget books from all the way back to bring yourself up. You can probably verify that, as can Mr. McIntyre, who was the attorney at that time. That was a priority to me. I can drop your millage rate, or I can work to make sure that we are safe and secure for the future. And for those unknown, unexpected, just like we each individually do in our own budgets at home. We put something away. Thankfully, the board at that time actually decided and made a policy that every year we would put monies to the side right off the top after the staff cuts were made, before they even made it to the commissioners. And that policy has been held true. It's been changed and moved around a little bit and reduced according to our budgets when the Depression hit, as Commissioner Zadowski likes to refer to it. Not a bad description, though. But it was when that hit that the board had, I believe, it was like $187 million in reserves. Now, you top that on to the fact that we were hit by 2 major hurricanes in 04-05 that literally wiped out all of that reserve, gone within 3 weeks. We were so bad that we actually had to go take out lines of credit, because unlike the state and the federal, we can't go and do anything without the money in the bank. I bring this up because there's been a lot of discussion tonight, and greatly appreciated and greatly needed. And one of my fellow board members asked me just a while ago during our break, he goes, "Is it always like this?" Because this is his first budget hearing. I'm going to throw you into the bus. And I said, no, I said, the last time this happened was when, in 06, was at what time I recalled it. But let me tell you, Mr. Tipton just gave a State of the County address this week. And I don't know how many of you were able to see it. In my understanding, it wasn't taped, unfortunately. But I'm going to show you just what in 10 years, which would have been 2010, how far this county's come. Those that live in poverty in 2010 was 17.6% in this county. Today, it's 12.8. Our median house price was $104,000 in 2010. Today, it's $230,950. Our population was 277 plus. In 19, it is now over 313,000. Our per capita income, which was huge, which was scary in 10, you can imagine what it was like in 1998, was only $30,300. Our per capita income now, in 2017, was $38,835. Our median income in 2010 was 39,378. Our median income today in 17, at the last figures, was $50,062. Our unemployment rate in 2010 was 13.9, and we went higher. Unemployment today is 4.3. Now, I will tell you that political name has been slashed around here no matter what party you are, but I can tell you I have had also the honor of being board members in the past, a member of this BOCC in the past with different board members, and I am very proud to say that each of these boards from 1998 to now have never made a decision that I have ever witnessed that was based on politics or what party you sat with. They have always been based on what is best for this community. Having said that, I want to point out a couple things that were brought up tonight. The new construction, new businesses that was brought up in a lot of people's comments. I hope you understand that what you're seeing going up today isn't on the tax roll. It's a year behind. So the figures that we get are actually a year behind. Those don't hit the tax roll till next year's. I just read you some stats on our poverty, our home prices, our per capita income, and our median income and unemployment. That is because this board, the past 5 years in our 5-year plan, put a heavy emphasis on bringing in new businesses, setting the foundation so those businesses can be here. And we did not give out monies. Any business that got an incentive, they have to earn it. They have to show the numbers, and it's a year later. We don't take it, they don't get the funds right off the bat. We do have a Citizens Budget Committee, and there are several members that have gotten up here tonight that sit on that board and have spoke. And I will tell you, out of all the advisory boards that this board has, that is one of the most valuable boards, in my opinion, that we have going for us, because it is made up of the citizens. They volunteer it. They come in once a month. They pour, and I mean, it's 7:30 in the morning, to be honest with you, and they're probably in there till about 11. And they pour over those facts that they're given. They struggle with, they discuss as citizens, as neighbors, and as friends. What's best? How can we cut? How can we make it better? Should we raise the millage? And I can tell you, I've sat here many times and had that citizens budget come to us and say, raise the millage. And I can tell you many times, this board has not done that. It's tough to be up here and hear some of the things, and it's needed to be said, but at the same time, I hope you look at it as an opportunity to share the information back to you. We are only in charge of so much of your tax bill. And I can tell you that I only maybe twice in my 17 years up here have ever voted for a tax increase. One had to do with public safety, mosquito control. We have in all the outbreaks out there, and there were maybe $1 million in reserves. The second one, I actually voted against it, but I supported the thought of it. I just thought we could find the money elsewhere. Was the increase a couple years ago to, I think it was 17, was for our law officers. And that was due to the increases they needed in their salaries. Well deserved in my book. Many of you have mentioned plans, how you have to plan. So does the county. And we have a 5-year plan. And as hard as I know this is to hear it, I'm sticking to that plan. This is our last year, and we've proved that we could do it in 5 years. We are no longer going to be using our reserves, if you will. But as members of the Citizens Budget members said tonight, the reserves are what counts. God forbid if we had been hit by Dorian a couple weeks ago, we wouldn't be sitting here. And you would be begging us to raise that millage because we wouldn't have the reserves to cover the damage. The sales tax that you also graciously voted and supported, those monies can't be used for these projects. We told everyone from day one, both cities and the county, there were specific projects that those funds were going to and that those monies would be spent on. That has never changed. In fact, many, us included, and the cities are probably supplementing to help get some of those projects going. Comment was made about Prima Vista. We're ready to go, but due to the constraints and the running behind of Crosstown, we decided to wait with the discussion with Port St. Lucie to hold off on Prima Vista till they got Crosstown open. Otherwise, you would have one main road, Port St. Lucie Boulevard. So it was a traffic issue. That's the only reason that road's not been started. But I can guarantee you, October 1, it'll probably be rocking and rolling. Many of you weren't sitting through our budget discussions like those in July when we had them. And those, it sounds silly when you say 3 days, Jennifer, because actually it's more than that because we all individually meet with the staff and we go over. It's 3 days of meetings that we're all together, but each one of us individually are still continuing those discussions as late as even today with the board, with staff. But at that meeting, one thing was loud and clear from all 5 members of this board. The next 5-year plan, we've made this one, and we did what we said we were going to do. We didn't go out on a limb. We stayed tight to it. That the next budget and the next 5-year plan, I should say, was to include a decrease in the millage. That is something I can tell you I will stand behind also. The comment was made about Port St. Lucie has dropped their millage rate, and I'm glad they have. They should have, because 5 years ago, 4 years ago, they raised it a full mill. You still haven't got the mill back yet. They are slowly dropping it down. We're not raising your millage. We are slowly trying to get where we can start dropping it instead of raising it. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to end my comments. I probably talked more than you would probably allow me in the past. But I would like to thank, though, the staff and all the members of the public and our Citizens Budget Committee members who not only meet through the year, but were at all of our budget discussions, you know, for their help and their input and their expertise, along with the budget the staff has produced for us this year, and that we've gone over and probably made cuts to in many cases. There were cuts made, as I recall. I do thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Timpton and Jennifer, there were a lot of questions regarding per capita income, and the one thing that I kept hearing was referral to the highest millage rate in the state. And it was referred to me as though I had concurred with that statement. If you take the aggregate, it is the highest in the state, and that is confirmed. However, the parts of the millage that we control, can you show us where we fall in with what we, as St. Lucie County, have, and where it falls in with the rest of the state, that which is the millage rate, and then where we fall on taxes collected per capita, et cetera.
Okay. I'll go over a couple of the slides that we have presented at previous board meetings throughout this budget process. First, I'll start with the entire tax bill. As you mentioned, St. Lucie County is the highest millage rate in the state of Florida, but as we've also talked about, that's only part of the equation.
But it's the aggregate of all taxing authorities.
But this is the aggregate for all taxing districts. So the 67 county average is 16.5160 mils, and we're at 22.8369 mils when you add in all the other taxing entities. When you look at just specifically Board of County Commissioners, we are this year we're in right now, we're at 8.9 mils. The millage rate that we're proposing for the aggregate millage rate is actually down just slightly at 8.87 mils. But for the purpose of this analysis, we were at 8.9 mils. The highest county was at 13 mils, lowest at 3.4319 mils. The average was at 7.9842 mils. So we are, when you talk about just Board of County Commissioners, we are slightly above average. We are not the highest county. One point I do want to make, I did mention it in the presentation, is when it comes to Board of County Commissioners, it is not always an apples to apples comparison. We did have a question from one of the speakers asking, with the fire district being separate in this county, does that mean they have that we have a 3 mil edge over everybody else? And it's not that straightforward. Our millage rate includes things like the mosquito control and erosion districts, while many other counties do not include that in their county millage rate. When it comes to the fire district's millage rate, even if we did not have a fire district, that doesn't necessarily mean that would be all a county tax in many other counties. When the county pays for the cost, it is just the unincorporated area, which is just a small portion of the fire district. So I did want to make that point. But back to your original question related to where we fell in comparison as a Board of County Commissioners, we are slightly above average at 8.9 mils for the current year.
And the taxes collected.
And so,
the
and that
actual
equates to
revenue.
the taxes collected that we talked about earlier in the presentation. We're at $602, where the average in the state of Florida for Board of County Commissioners is $615. The lowest county in the state of Florida was $147, and the highest is $1,257. So we're about half of what the highest county is.
In that statement, the lowest millage rate in the state, what is the taxes collected for that particular county if they had the lowest millage? Because we talked about the equation.
Well, I'll talk about it when it comes to the overall tax bill, because that's where it makes most sense. When we talk about Board of County Commissioners, it's different counties. But when it comes to the total tax bill, the lowest county here at 8.99 mils has the highest property value in the state of Florida, and therefore, when it comes to this slide, they are the same county that has the highest property taxes. So millage does not necessarily equate simply to higher taxes. It is it's both parts of the equation. And so in this case, for the entire tax bill, the county with the highest tax bill is also the county with the lowest millage rate.
And then on page 3 of the, I don't know if it's the same stack that you have, but it's the trim announcement where it talks about the tentative aggregate millage for 2019-20 was 8.8759, and then in that slide, it says this is a 0.28% decrease from the current 18-19 aggregate millage rate of 8.9007. So in essence, it is coming down.
The aggregate is coming down. It's slight, but it is coming down.
So from that standpoint, there's that for the folks who have asked for something. I think somebody said, throw us a bone or something like that, but 0.28% decrease from the previous aggregate. Furthermore, there's the discussion about the increase last year for the SROs, which was in the millions of dollars. When we made that budget decision, and we all support taking care and protecting our children, our schools, and so on, St. Lucie County has been paying for SROs for the school district for many years, where many other counties do not and have not funded those costs. So when we are taking money out of the general fund and fine and forfeiture from those revenues and putting it toward a school district cost, that takes away our ability to use for roads, drainage, water quality, and things of the nature of general fund use. So when we move money to pay for something that is truly not our responsibility, that's a challenge for us to find ways to make up that money. The other comment that I want to make is, and let me think this through, a couple points were made, and Commissioner Hutchinson, you did talk about the businesses and how we have changed the culture in St. Lucie County as to be pro-business. We heard a couple statements that we are not pro-business. I would state that that's not factual. We actually invest in the Economic Development Council, who assists us in finding businesses to come here because of all the positive things that we have, including quality of life. There's a recent expansion of the Pursuit boats. That's 200,000 square feet. Maverick boats is going to be another 200,000 square feet, and hundreds of jobs not only saved that didn't move away, but these are local businesses that have been here for a long time, and they have basically doubled and will double in size. We brought in another several 100,000 square foot of Oculus Corporation from Germany to build LASIK, computerized LASIK surgery units here in the county. We supported the efforts with Port St. Lucie on a 400,000 square foot expansion of City Electric, and that is going up now rapidly. And as part of that, there's a CRA component in which we pay the cities for their community redevelopment agencies, which comes out of any revenue that we could have brought in. Go on to, let's see. A couple folks indicated helping seniors, and I think that that option is there. And if the folks don't know that there is a senior homestead exemption, I don't know if our property appraisers are here, but if you are a senior, there are multiple homestead exemptions that you can take. And if you reach a certain age or you're disabled, any number of other elements that come into play, there are additional homestead exemptions that you can receive. And I would certainly recommend speaking to the property appraiser to see if there's an opportunity for that to be an option for you. Let's go back to how the Depression started in 2009. We had the situation in 2006. We had the highest property values in assessed values of over $25 billion. So again, taking that equation, what the millage rate was times the assessed value gave us that number. However, in 2009, the legislature did an automatic reduction of 9% of all values to start the process of lowering values, which ultimately lowered budgets and revenue streams. That then was coupled immediately thereafter with another $25,000 homestead exemption, which was then followed again either the following year or the year after that, another $25,000 exemption. Well, understanding that that's an option that the legislature can do, we make our budgets the year prior, and so we then see that the following year that these have not been accounted for. So there's always moving sands under our feet with our budget. And so while a tax break at the state level oftentimes becomes a increase at the local level, because it gets passed on to us. And I think Mr. Mucklow and I agree, you're right, vigorously on unfunded mandates as an issue. And, the inmate medical is something we must pay, and it depends on who's in your jail. There's no rhyme or reason as to how much each year we would end up having to pay. And also, you brought up the Medicare portion. Some folks are saying about, how do we help our seniors? Well, is it not a part of the county's budget that we pay, into the Medicare costs for hospital care?
Medicaid, not Medicare.
Medicaid, okay.
Yes,
But that is something that we have to pay.
Yes, sir.
Which is, not something that we can just say no to.
It is not optional, that is
Okay.
correct.
And I thought I tried to get as many questions that were asked, and if you had any others, I'm still going through my notes to find all the questions or statements that could try and help answer. But I'll stop for now. Oh, yeah. You talked about 2004, Commissioner, about how those two storms really hit the county. I wasn't here, but if I recall, and this is a memory from 15 years ago, Indian River Drive actually basically caved in, and that was approximately a $36 to $40 million cost to the county. There was FEMA money back then, and it was something that we could count on. And then there was also having to have the match money to do that. Well, what's happening today, and it was referred to by somebody, that FEMA payments are not being, coming to us as they would. If I understand too, there's still $9 million in question of FEMA reimbursements for 2004 that we have not yet received. And so the challenge is, the so-called backstop of FEMA, the insurer of the nation. It's unpredictable, and unfortunately, if we don't get reimbursed for some of the damage, whether it's that road, whether it's the culverts, whether it's roadways, whether it's beach erosion, et cetera, that comes from our budget. And you were going to say something, so I don't want to keep going. So.
Just thank you, Commissioner. I would just share, I think the number may be closer to 4 million that is still outstanding, but it's a large number, the exact number. What I think I see over the time that I've been doing this is that there's kind of a devolution of responsibility from the federal level to the state and then down to the local levels. And we are left to fend for ourselves much more than had been done in the past. It's a challenge, especially on tight budgets. We just have to look at the beach as an example, where the Fort Pierce Beach is a Army Corps of Engineer responsibility because of the erosion that is caused by the federal inlet that we have. We know that that beach needs to be renourished every 2 years, but it requires a congressional authorization of funding, an appropriation for that to the Army Corps. Doesn't always happen. This year is going to be another one of those opportunities for the county to step up and do what we call a truck haul as an intermediate step to help repair the erosion from the beach. We had estimated it to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 million. With the storm damage, that number is going to go higher. And just as an example of something that is left to local devices to solve, as opposed to receiving the assistance from the federal government.
And then voter-approved referendums. Again, this year we're managing that which was approved by the voters for the schools. That's one. Somebody brought up our preserves, and our preserves in the 90s, a lot of folks were coming here from Miami-Dade and Broward and insisting that this county and surrounding counties begin to maintain green space and to not build on every inch and not build a parking lot or how's that go, something like Paradise and build a parking lot or something. There's a song in there somewhere. But that was voter approved. It was a $20 million value over a 20-year period. Those 10,000 acres have resulted in the investment with matches to more than $70 million versus the value. So we will maintain Old Florida to a large extent in the quality of life, which is a huge reason why people come here to begin with. And then there was one other statement made that our budget went up $42 million more this year. I think there's a point in there that we're holding in that which was the construction of the first data field as that component. Had that started on time, that would not have been in the budget. Is that accurate?
Well, that what your statement is accurate, but it's already in this year's budget, so it's not the driving force for it. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we have a variety of sources for our budget, and some of those things. Sometimes when we have more money, it's a good thing. When we get additional grants, it's part of what is driving the budget up, and that's a good thing that we're getting additional money coming into the county that's not coming from property taxes. But then on top of that, we've talked at length about the sales tax that was not in place last year when we adopted the budget at this time last year, and so that money is budgeted for the coming year, as well as the change in the incremental values for property taxes. So those are the big three things that are driving the $42 million.
And a couple other statements were made that the mayor has indicated a 60% increase for salary and then a 30% for council. This body has no control over the independent municipality, which is Port St. Lucie, and their efforts. Where else do I got? Trying to make sure I hit everybody and try to answer. And Crosstown Parkway, speaking of voter approved debt, that was approved for the Crosstown Parkway. So that was a voter approved source of revenue to build the Crosstown Parkway. That is going to be complete in a couple of weeks, I guess, or next week. So, and we didn't have any control over any of that.
That was through the city of Port St. Lucie. I think there were a couple questions about the referendum that I heard in there. One was just what dictates how they're done, because one was, with the one we did for the sales tax, it was on a general election versus the school board, which was a special election. And then the other question I heard was, does our board have any future plans at this time to do any other referendums to increase taxes? And at this time, the board has not made any decisions that would direct us to start working on any new referendums. As far as the legal requirements on how the referendums are done, one was done through St. Lucie County and one was done through the school board. I'm not one to speak to that other than to say that it's dictated by state law and the rules and regulations, unless you have anything to add on those.
And then just one last one, and I'll quit. Indian River Drive, it was talked about water quality. Unfortunately, we have been battling the discharges from Lake Okeechobee for many years. Some of us on multiple boards trying to get that cleaned up with SERP and SEP federal projects and state efforts. However, St. Lucie County did engage in early on in 2004 is when the property was purchased through an agreement, and I don't remember the state agency, but the city of Fort Pierce and St. Lucie County teamed up for the Indian Hills Stormwater Project. That was started in 2009, and it was completed about 3 years later. That was a cost of multiple agencies, grants, and so on and so forth. We cobbled together, I'm going to say now, $8 or $9 million to increase the size of the lake by 25,000 acre feet, and created a process by which to clean the water from the entire Virginia Avenue corridor. Instead of going directly into the lagoon, that project now cleans hundreds of pounds of contaminants out of that water, and oftentimes is not discharged to the lagoon at all. As a matter of fact, the oyster bed restoration has been completed at the base of that outfall, and as part of that water cleaning process, We're seeing seagrasses regrow. We're seeing new types of marine life come in there, and additional life is coming to the lagoon in that specific area. So we are paying attention to the water quality. It's always been something that this county has done in protecting the environment. But that was one specific area that we made a huge investment to clean up the water that directly was discharging into the lagoon. So I tried to take as many notes as possible, so I hope I got to everybody that I was keeping notes on. So there's probably more, but thank you, Madam.
So yes, between you and Commissioner Hutchinson, you did, so we were all taking good notes, right? So I'm not going to rehash what you've said or Commissioner Hutchinson has said, but I do want to say that for me, I look at this as a business, and that's how I only know to look at things. I'm not from government. I don't have a past in government. And so I can remember, as Commissioner Mitchell's going through it right now, my first year sitting up here, it was a challenge, and we had to have these conversations. We had to get here. So now, this being my third budget, I'm not saying that I know totally what I'm doing, but I know that I know a little bit more than I did 3 years ago. And why I do agree with Commissioner Hutchinson and Commissioner Zadowski, it's true. And there's a lot of things that we, as the general public and population, don't understand, is the facts that we have Florida statutes that we have to follow that are passed by law, and we don't have a choice. And so unless you are in office, it's something that you would never know about. As it's been stated in the past, we also have unfunded mandates. And so when an unfunded mandate comes through, we as the board have to figure out what we're going to do to get there. And so unless you have ran for an office and you really study these issues, or you've served, it's things that you would never know. And so this is always probably the most difficult time of year for me, because I know where our staff is and I know what the needs are, and we hear them. And I know that there's things that we have that are amazing, and I think that we are the best in the state. And then there's things that I see that I know that need improvement. And so I am somebody, though, that agree with the majority of you out there in the fact that we have a budget, and we as a county do not print money, and we do have to learn to stay within our budget. And so I agree with our budget, and I really don't know how Mr. Tipton seems to come to the table each year that I've been here and the years prior to me, get sleep at night, because he has a huge challenge to be able to balance everything and to meet the needs of public safety and our roads. But for me, what I take away from all of this year is this. There was a gap of trust between politicians, and I don't want to refer to politicians because it shouldn't be about the politicians. This shouldn't be about a political party. This is about we the people that live here in St. Lucie County. This isn't about a Republican or a Democrat or no party affiliation or Tea Party. It's about us, all of us. And for the first time in 2016, I saw gaps closing where there was a huge distrust between the commissioners and the constituents and the constitutional officers bridging to come together. And I saw that begin when the first issue came through with the sales tax. And it was an educational process, and we learned from that. We learned that there was not trust, but we also learned that we failed the people because we didn't educate, we didn't reach out to you, and we didn't speak to you in terms that you understood really the truth behind the sales tax and what it was going to do to protect you. And I know that there's a lot of people that disagreed with the sales tax because you just simply don't want any more taxes. But we came back, and through conversation and rewording it and having conversations with the city and having everybody understand, we collaboratively came together as a family, and the trust was rebuilt. They gave us a gift. At the same time, they educated themselves, and they understood, like some have said this evening, that we did not give the other homestead exemption, because they were smart enough to understand that when you're going to take a tax break, it's going to cost in the back end, and that's another thing that we have to figure out, and we would have lost $8 million in St. Lucie County alone. They gave us that gift. So They gave us the half a cent sales tax because they understood that everybody would pay. They gave us the gift of not an additional homestead. They gave the teachers a raise that's not a fix, it's 3 years. So we will have to have that conversation again. And again, I do want to say that we up here as a board, I know that there was a lot of things mentioned here tonight about the city of Fort Pierce and the city of Port St. Lucie. The city police departments, we have no jurisdiction over. We can't tell them what to do and how to spend their money. We are only partners with the sheriff. And so the taxes in the city, the amenities in the cities, we have no say-so in that. We are only here to make the decisions in the unincorporated county. And so for me, when I look at the gift that we were given, we really had an easy year this year. We had an easy year and we were given gifts. But for me, the biggest gift of all was that we had the bond between us and we were finally back as a family, as a whole, in trust, and they were trusting in the leadership. And so for me, I look at it from a different perspective, and I look at it that they believed in us, and I thank you all for that, that it's time for us to give them something, if it's just something little, to give back to them, to continue to grow in this trust and to grow in this relationship. And I approve our budget. I know that our budget is needed, but I also agree that there's ways to still trim the budget and cut it. And I know that we're looking at that. I know as the port develops, I know as the airport develops, we will get better. We will be stronger. And so for me, the one thing I took away this year most was we are the highest millage rate in the state, but yet out of all 67 counties, we have the most unproductive port and airport in the county. Now, we're getting there, and we will be number one. There's no doubt in my mind. We will be the number one port and airport in the state because we have rose to the occasion. We're the number one fire district. We're the only district on its own taxing authority. And as I go out there through things with FAC, I hear the fire departments, they really are wanting what we have here. And so I know that through Mr. Tipton's leadership and Stan Payne that's come on board, and I know that the vision of all of us, we are there. We are ready and we are willing and we are going to grow the port and we're going to grow the airport and we will be number one. But for me, I cannot approve the millage rate of where we're going because for me, I want to give the gift back to the community that they have allowed us to have an easier year this year of our budget. And it might be year 5 of a strategic plan, but the strategic plan was based on numbers from year 1. 2, 3, 4, and 5, if you had those same numbers, you would have found a way to get there. But the property values have climbed, and so that's another gift. So for me, I will not be voting in favor of this evening. I'm wanting to see at least a 0.10. I want something. I want something to be given back, and I want to gift them the way that they've given us.
Last but not least, first I want to thank everybody in this room. It is a process, and you have every right, and it's a democratic process. That's how we are as a country, and that's why we were formed. You taxation with representation. It's been a big learning experience. Tomorrow will mark 10 months that I've had the honor and privilege to sit in front of you and act on your behalf for the benefit and the conditions of our county. Commissioner Hutchinson and Commissioner Zadowski, when you spoke earlier, you two are our elders on this board, and I take your guidance, and not in age, because I'll be 61 in a couple weeks, and you know they say 60 is the old 40, well 9 o'clock is the old midnight, so I'm not going to keep it too much longer. But there's just a couple things that I want to read. I have some prepared things, and a lot of them covered those things tonight. But for this year, the county is seeking to hold the millage rate steady for the next fiscal year, which you know begins October 1st. I was surprised to learn through the budget workshops this year that the county's general fund, which funds most general government operations and comes from property taxes, brings in about what we did in 2007. Another surprising fact was that the county is completing its 5-year plan this next year and of no longer relying on reserves to stabilize the budget due to insufficient property tax revenues. And one last surprising thing that I learned was that last year the county brought in $7 million less in property taxes than in 2007, but during the same period of time increased funding for public safety by $25 million. Now, as I learned through this process, I also know that in 2007, our annual budget was approaching $700 million. Today, we're asking you to approve, or you're asking us to approve, a $587 million budget with 54,000 more residents and 182 less employees. So to say we're not lean and mean is incorrect. Howard, I heard one of the other commissioners call you a rock star the other day, and I concur with that. Your leadership for this county, I wish everyone in this room would have been able to see that video yesterday where he presented the state of the county. The county is on a cusp of really taking off and doing good things. What I learned in business for the last 20 years, I've been driving to and from Palm Beach County, and every day I can see marked cars that I can associate with, whether it's a deputy from Palm Beach County or somebody from Boynton Beach or firefighters, because you can identify their cars. They're working down there, they're living up here. When a company looks to expand your business or to relocate, they want to come to St. Lucie County, and we've seen that. I've seen that with my own eyes the last 10 months here. What the companies look at, in my mind, there's three things. One is your cost of living. Number two is your infrastructure. How do you get your goods and services to market? And number three is your education. Do you have a trained workforce? For the last 12 years, I've had the distinct honor of sitting on the Career Source Board, and I've seen the partnerships with this year. What was the name of the ministries that this year helped fund the Summer Success?
Allegheny Franciscan Ministries.
Okay. This is a great story. You're taking young men and women, and you're not teaching them to buy things. You're teaching them trades and learning things. And this is what we need. When companies want to come here, they want a workforce. That's what the companies look for. We're doing all those things. I'm excited to be up here to work for you all, and I will be a watchdog for you. I don't think that we're overspending. I think there was some needs that in this county, for instance, until we get T-groins into your beaches, we are continuously every year on an average of over $2.5 million. We're renourishing our beaches, and nobody's helping us pay for it. We're stuck with that bill. And you as a taxpayer, that's where part of your money's going. There is a solution to it. Can we get there? Absolutely, we can. I can assure you that St. Lucie County is committed to both being efficient and effective with the tax revenues it receives. As now the 20th largest county in the state of Florida out of 67 counties with a population of approximately 320,000 residents, and with the 7th largest city in the state of Port St. Lucie, we continue to work to meet the rising demands of a growing and changing population. I know that it's important that our citizens feel safe. I learned something tonight. I have a 94-year-old mother. I didn't know that she could get an exemption because of her age if she so chooses to do. The next 6 months, the county will be going through its first strategic planning process in a number of years. I see this as an opportunity to examine and prioritize county services and hope you will participate, each and every one of you in this room. You have my commitment to continue to examine opportunities to collaborate more, not less, and to be more efficient and effective, and to reduce a tax burden wherever possible. I ran on a policy of people over politics, and I believe that. Everyone up here, all 5 members and everybody on staff, we don't do about party affiliation. We want to do what's best for the citizens of this county. And I'm proud to live here. I've been here 29 years, and I've seen the growth, and I've seen the good things that this county is doing, and I'm excited to be a part of the process. So I will be supporting the budget for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. So you guys have said pretty much all of it, answered most of the questions. Chris, I don't know whether I just didn't hear you say it, but I heard you talk about Oculus. I heard you talk about City Electric. I heard you talk about Pursuit Boats and Maverick Boats, who could have left us and not only decided to stay, but decided to grow with us. They certainly had the opportunity. But the two things that you might have said I didn't hear you say was I didn't hear you talk about our port and where those jobs are going to be and what we're going to be doing there and what the economic impact is going to be. And I can't believe you didn't mention this one because I know that this is your heart. And you want to mention it
No,
now?
Go ahead.
Treasure Coast International Airport. So to get through a night without you mentioning it, I had to do it for you.
But the economic impact is what is the issue there. You know,
Yes.
several years ago, the economic impact was approximately 150 to 170 million dollars. And the last numbers in 17, they are now over 500 million, approaching 600 million, and possibly in 19, with all that which is happening at the airport, the economic engine, that which is the airport, may and should exceed $1 billion. So when we talk about how do we create an economy that is well-rounded, not just relying in the old days on rooftops, retirees, and tourism, we've lost our citrus industry. So we've got to make that up somewhere else. So we've had a huge focus on manufacturing and including the training part of that, as stated. So thank you for bringing it up. But that economic impact is what we're approaching on, and that will help us to move forward to actually reduce the property taxes, because that'll be an opportunity. And then everybody who gets those jobs at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 will be participating in buying homes and helping our economy as well.
And thank you, you just mentioned it. We are bringing in better salaries, better jobs. We are focusing on those jobs that suit our community. The other thing that wasn't mentioned, and again, I know there was a little surprise on it, but Amazon's here. So again, there's more jobs, there is more opportunity, and we continue to work those areas so that in the strategic plan, when we are through that, we're going to see what the long-term benefits are going to be. I am on board with the Budget Committee and the reserves. I sat through the threat of that hurricane at the EOC and watched a phenomenal group of people, our staff, law enforcement from all the municipalities, our fire district, our health department, FDLE, I mean, everyone was represented. And there were times when we were focused on the path of the storm, and you could feel that we could have cut the air with a knife. So we were all aware, and we all thought about, what is that going to do to our community? Our first thought was, how are our residents going to get through this? How many houses are going to survive? Where are we going to do our recoveries? Those were our first thoughts. And then I have to tell you, we were thinking, how are we going to pay for this if we get the direct hit that the path was showing us? So I want you to know that our concern is there. I can remember sitting with Mr. Tipton in my office and saying, I want to reduce the millage. We talked about what we needed to do, where we needed to go. You know, I keep hearing, I know it's very tiny, but there is a slight reduction in the overall millage. It's there. And I expect that we are going to continue on that path. I've said it before, both from here in our meetings. I am very excited about putting a strategic plan together. I think that's so important. It's important for any business. It's certainly important for us. It keeps us on path. It keeps us accountable. It keeps us where we need to be so that we're looking at the long-range picture. We don't look at things for today. We're looking at 25 years out, 50 years out, and more. We talk about something else. So, Mr. Gotts, I'm going to call you out. And just one that's already been answered, but Prima Vista, I have to tell you, I have been a big supporter of Prima Vista for a lot of years. So that goes way back to my prior life. I am very excited that we are going to hop on that one. But I have to tell you, I was very pleased with the collaboration with the city of Port St. Lucie. Once they determined when they were going to open Crosstown, that we said, okay, let's work our schedule with them. Had you closed down, had Crosstown closed and Prima Vista at the same time, I think there would be a whole different conversation, and you wouldn't have been up here happy about that either. Just saying. So I'm really glad to see that we all work together to get there. We've made a commitment, and I think everybody here has made it, is that we're going to continue on the path. We're going to work hard. What we are lowering that millage this time is not, I'm going to say not acceptable, but certainly we have a certain budget to meet. But I expect that we will be lowering it again and working harder on that. So I think that our staff is out there. They work hard. They are that staff that I will tell you I get tired of hearing say, do more with less. Because I see them do it all the time, and there's got to be a point. Because then I get afraid that they're going to go, yeah, I can do what I need to do somewhere else. So we have a very dedicated, overall a very good staff. They're good at what they do. So that's important to me. You didn't, and maybe I didn't hear it, Jennifer, when you talked about the lowest county at the go back. The one at the $273, however, was, let me make sure I understood what you said again.
Other way around, let me go back to this slide. On the millage rates for the total tax bill, the lowest county at 8.9956
Right.
mils is also, I'm going to go to the next slide, on the actual taxes collected. They are the highest in the taxes
Okay.
collected.
Do you know who that is?
Yes, I do.
I knew you would tell me.
My hometown, Monroe County.
Okay. So they are not, I'm assuming, a suburban county like we are. So there is a lot of growth, a lot of industrial, a lot of I'm sorry.
Yeah, Monroe County is the Keys, and there's very
tourist
limited.
development. There's a lot of stuff
It's a
that's-
completely. It is a different environment, but the point of the millage rate equating to the highest taxes is still the point of that. But yet every community has a different community to provide for, different growth rates. Some counties are coastal, some are not. There are so many factors that differ one community from another. So I'm not trying to place judgment on specific communities, more so just trying to point out the fact that a lower millage, the lowest millage rate does not necessarily equate to the lowest taxes, as does the highest millage rate doesn't equate to the highest taxes.
So I'm not making judgment on those counties either, but I'm still living in St. Lucie County. So again, I think that we have gone through most everything. I think that we are all working hard to make our county the best it can be. I know that the staff has worked hard on the budget. I know the staff works hard every day. I think for me, it's important to build the reserves. If we had gotten hit by Dorian, I can't even imagine where we would have gotten that money from. So, but again, I expect and will hold you accountable for looking in the future to make sure that we are bringing down that mill and that we are working together to do the best we can for the residents that we have here.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm shocked that you didn't say this one too. So
Okay.
we actually had a gentleman that stood up and spoke about his military days. And so our efforts from Commissioner Hutchinson through her time here and her passion, we also have the nursing home going in. And so I'd also like to say thank you to all of those that spoke tonight, and I want to thank the gentlemen and women that have served in the military, because that was something that was a big thing whenever you first started it, and you've rallied that, Commissioner Hutchinson, and you've seen it through.
Oh, yes.
So
Few of us.
I too, like,
There was a few of us in that one.
well, yeah, you were in it too, Commissioner Zosky. But again, like they have said too, I think we all can sit here and look at you tonight and let you know, as Mr. Tipton addressed the county yesterday, and I'm proud, and I know the other four sitting here with me, Mr. Tipton has done a great job, and I'm honored to, I say, work under him, and we are in a great place, and great things are happening, and I'm really proud to be a part of this team and the things that we've just done in the last 3 years. I'm looking forward to where it's going to go. And again, unfortunately, when a disaster happens, it really wakes you up and makes you realize just how blessed and proud and prepared we are. Because I know that we can sit here and tell you that irregardless to whatever would have happened, you were all safe and you would have all been provided for. So St. Lucie County is a great place to live. And this too, we will all work through this. And again, Mr. Tipton, you did a great job in your speech yesterday, and you do a great job in leadership. Jennifer, you and your team with the budget, I know this is not an easy process. And I'm just proud to be a part of this. And I want you to all be a proud of where you live. And it might not be perfect, but we're going to all get there together.
And I want to take a second to thank the people from the property appraiser's office.
here?
The fact that you are here, the fact that you help those who need their help with their trim notices, what things that they can look at. I appreciate you guys spending your evening here. To all of our staff, I say thank you. But more to all the residents who got up and spoke here, thank you. Thank you all. We need to hear. We can't do anything without your input. And we're all, as we've all sat and spoke, we're all willing to talk about how we come to the conclusions, what we need to do, and let you know that these are the commitments that we've all made. So with that, with no other comments,
Madam Chair, based on the board's conversation, we're now at agenda item 4E, and that means that we're ready for the approval of the resolution adopting the fiscal year 2019-2020 final millage rates.
Madam Chair, move approval of resolution adopting the fiscal year 2019-2020 final millage rates as staff recommends. was a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Townsend,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Zadowski,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Bartz.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this takes us then to Agenda Item 4F. Commissioners, we're now ready for the approval of the resolution adopting the fiscal year 2019-2020 final budget.
Madam Chair, motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Townsend,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Zadowski,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Bartz.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, that concludes our hearing this evening. On behalf of your staff, we want to thank you for the conversation that you've had with us throughout this entire year, throughout this budget deliberation process, and we look forward to working with you on the plans. As we talked yesterday, we've just completed, I think, at least the last 5 years, the best 5 years this county has seen, and we look forward to planning the next 5 years with you. So thank you.
Adjourned.
Oh.